Doomerism is the belief that the future is beyond saving. People who adopt this mindset see the world heading toward collapse and feel there is nothing anyone can do to stop it. This belief leads to emotional numbness, deep pessimism, and often a refusal to act. Doomerism is not just about being sad or worried. It's a complete loss of hope that things can get better. The term doomer has grown popular on the internet in recent years, especially among younger people. It reflects a shared sense that the systems we rely on, climate, politics, economy, are breaking down, and that efforts to fix them are too little, too late. A person with doomer beliefs might say that recycling is pointless because climate change will continue no matter what. They may not vote because they think politicians are all the same. They may not try to build a career or plan a family because they expect society to collapse before long. This doesn't come from laziness. It often stems from real fear, frustration, or exhaustion. When the future feels like a dead end, motivation fades. Even people who once cared deeply can become cold and withdrawn under this weight. The internet plays a strong role in spreading doomerism. Online spaces are full of negative headlines, bleak forecasts, and echo chambers that reinforce hopeless views. In some cases, people bond over dark humor and memes about how bad things are. While this can be a way to cope, it also normalizes despair. When all you see are signs of collapse, it becomes easier to believe that change is impossible. Social media amplifies this effect. Every flood, fire, or war becomes part of a steady stream of reasons to give up. With no filter for perspective or progress, the worst news drowns out everything else. Some people fall into doomerism after being very engaged. They might have worked in climate activism, politics, or social causes. Over time, the slow pace of change and repeated setbacks can crush optimism. Imagine a person who spends 10 years fighting for clean energy, only to see carbon emissions continue to rise. Or someone who campaigns for police reform, but watches the same abuses happen again and again. For people like this, doomerism is not laziness. It's burnout turned into resignation. In some ways, doomerism can serve as a defense. If you stop believing the future matters, you protect yourself from disappointment. But that protection comes with a cost. Believing that nothing can be fixed often leads to isolation and poor mental health. It can push people into depression, addiction, or even self-destructive behavior. Some retreat into video games or drugs. Others just stop trying. They check out of society because they feel it's collapsing anyway. In extreme cases, doomerism becomes a kind of passive suicide, not an act of violence, but a slow letting go. To understand this better, think of someone named Ali. He's 25, lives in a dense city, and studied environmental science. He once dreamed of working with a global NGO. But after years of reading about melting ice caps, rising sea levels, and oil lobbyists blocking policy, he starts to believe nothing will change. He sees governments break promises, companies greenwash their actions, and wildfires burn every summer. Each piece of news adds weight to his despair. Over time, Ali stops applying for jobs in his field. He deletes LinkedIn. He tells himself it's useless. Instead, he works part-time and spends his evenings scrolling through subreddits filled with other doomer voices. They tell him he's not alone, but they also reinforce his sense that trying is a waste. This loss of agency is the heart of doomerism. It removes the idea that individual or collective effort matters. Without agency, there is no reason to act. You can see this in responses to climate change. Some people install solar panels or support carbon taxes. Others say it's too late and do nothing. The difference isn't knowledge, it's belief in the chance of success. Doomers know the facts, but they've lost faith in the power to use them. There is also a political edge to doomerism. Some people use it to justify extreme views. They say that democracy has failed, that peaceful protest is pointless, or that collapse is coming no matter what. These beliefs can make people vulnerable to conspiracy theories or dangerous movements. When hope dies, extreme ideas grow. A person who thinks there's no future might support violence or authoritarian control if they think it will bring order to chaos. Still, not everyone who feels hopeless is a doomer. Feeling overwhelmed by the world is human. What turns it into doomerism is when that feeling becomes your worldview. It is the shift from "I'm scared" to "there is no point." It becomes a full identity. You stop engaging. You start to expect collapse. You no longer believe in progress, only decay. People sometimes mistake realism for doomerism. It is realistic to say that climate change is serious or that global inequality is rising. But realism leaves room for action. Doomerism does not. Realists might say, "Things are bad, but here's what we can do." Doomers say, "Things are bad, and it doesn't matter." That difference matters. The world needs people who can see problems and still choose to act. Even so, doomerism won't go away through argument alone. You can't talk someone out of it by quoting facts or showing charts. The roots are emotional. People need to feel that their actions matter. They need signs of progress. They need support systems, mentors, and success stories. Without these, it's easy to fall back into the belief that nothing will change. Take another example. Sarah, a high school teacher. She sees how climate anxiety affects her students. They talk about dying oceans and unlivable cities. Some say they don't want to have kids. Sarah doesn't lie to them, but she also shows them stories of people making change. Urban farms, restored forests, solar villages. She assigns projects where students design their own sustainable communities. Through these activities, she helps them see that action is possible. That's not about false hope. It's about agency. At its core, doomerism is not just a response to facts. It's a response to how we frame the future. When we treat problems as fixed or too big, we invite despair. But when we name problems and still offer pathways forward, we create space for effort. The future is not written yet. Believing that can be hard, but it is not impossible. Radical individualism is the idea that the self comes first in all things. It is the belief that people should act entirely in their own interest, regardless of how their actions affect others. While individual freedom is a key part of many societies, radical individualism takes it to an extreme. It rejects shared responsibility, weakens trust in others, and breaks down the bonds that hold communities together. When this mindset spreads, it becomes harder for people to work together, solve problems, or care for one another. A person shaped by radical individualism sees life as a competition. They believe success depends only on personal choices. If someone fails, they assume it's their fault. If someone struggles, they should fix it alone. The idea of helping others or being helped starts to look like weakness. In this view, people owe nothing to their neighbors or society. Everyone is on their own. This way of thinking has grown stronger in recent decades, especially in countries where consumer culture and personal branding have taken center stage. One example of radical individualism appears in workplace culture. In some companies, people are pushed to focus only on their own performance. They're told to build their brand or be their own CEO. The idea is to stand out, outpace others, and rise up the ladder alone. There is less room for collaboration or shared wins. Coworkers become competitors. Support systems shrink. Over time, this breaks down trust and team morale. People stop sharing ideas. They stop helping each other. The group loses strength, even if a few individuals rise. In housing and neighborhoods, the same pattern shows up. In communities shaped by radical individualism, people build higher walls, install more locks, and avoid talking to neighbors. Public spaces lose value. Parks are neglected. Libraries close. The idea of public good fades. People focus only on their own home, their own yard, their own safety. But when no one feels responsible for the common spaces, those spaces decay. Isolation grows. People stop feeling like they belong anywhere. Politics also feels the effect. When voters adopt radical individualism, they stop caring about policies that help others. They vote only based on what benefits them personally: lower taxes, less regulation, or private gain. Programs that support the poor, the elderly, or the sick lose support. Collective action becomes harder. Common goals are replaced by personal gain. This creates a divided society where empathy fades and cooperation becomes rare. Consider someone named Harun. He is successful in his job, owns a car, and lives in a gated home. He believes he earned everything himself and owes nothing to others. He avoids taxes when possible. He doesn't vote. He thinks government programs are a waste. If someone is homeless or struggling, he assumes they're lazy. He keeps to himself, avoids helping others, and sees community events as a waste of time. Harun might feel secure, but he's cut off from others. When trouble comes, like illness, job loss, or disaster, he has no support. His isolation becomes a trap. Radical individualism also affects how we think about identity. People start to believe that what makes them unique is more important than what connects them to others. They invest more time in curating a personal image than building real relationships. Online platforms reward this. Social media encourages self-promotion, self-branding, and constant comparison. The focus is not on what people share, but on how they stand out. This can lead to loneliness, anxiety, and the feeling of being constantly judged. In education, the problem shows in how students are pushed to outperform each other. Group work is rare. Grades define worth. Success is framed as beating the rest. This can make students less willing to help one another. They start seeing their peers not as allies, but as threats. The habit of working together fades. When they grow up, this mindset carries into jobs, families, and society. Even parenting is touched by this view. Some parents raise children to believe they must never rely on anyone. Asking for help is seen as weakness. Emotions are hidden. Vulnerability is avoided. Children learn to pretend they're always fine, even when they're not. They carry this into adulthood and struggle to build close connections. They may succeed by some measures, but they often feel alone. Radical individualism also shapes how people think about health. In some places, people view illness as a personal failure. If someone gets sick, it's assumed they made bad choices. This can stop people from seeking help. It can lead to shame and silence. When health becomes an individual issue only, the idea of public health suffers. Vaccines, clean water, mental health programs all depend on shared effort. When people act only for themselves, those systems fail. Think of a town hit by a flood. If people believe in shared responsibility, they come together. They rescue each other, share supplies, clean streets, and rebuild as a team. But if people believe they are only responsible for themselves, they shut their doors, hoard supplies, and leave others behind. The town suffers more. Recovery is slower. Trust erodes. That's the cost of radical individualism. Not all self-interest is bad. People need independence and personal choice. But when those things become the only values, something is lost. Human beings are social by nature. We survive and thrive through cooperation, not isolation. Radical individualism ignores that truth. It assumes that freedom means standing alone, when in fact, freedom often depends on others, on roads we didn't build, food we didn't grow, and hands that lift us when we fall. A balanced society needs both personal freedom and shared duty. When one grows too strong and the other fades, the system breaks down. Radical individualism promises control, but delivers loneliness. It says you owe nothing, but gives you nothing in return. A society shaped by this mindset may look strong on the surface, but underneath it becomes brittle. Without trust, empathy, or shared goals, even the most advanced systems can fall apart. The strength of a group does not come from how well each person competes, but from how well they connect. Blind trust in algorithms happens when people accept decisions made by machines without asking questions. These decisions are often made by artificial intelligence or data systems that follow patterns. While algorithms can be useful, relying on them too much can lead to serious problems. When people stop thinking for themselves and start following what an algorithm tells them without context or care, mistakes happen. Worse, those mistakes can go unnoticed or be accepted as normal. Algorithms are used in many areas. They decide which news you see, which job applications get noticed, how police patrol areas, and who gets a loan. They are fast and they can process huge amounts of data. That makes them seem objective or fair. But algorithms are only as good as the data they use and the people who design them. If there is bias in the data, or if the model is trained without care, the results will reflect those problems. And if no one questions the results, the damage grows. Imagine a hospital that uses an algorithm to rank patients based on who needs care most urgently. It relies on past data about patient history, symptoms, and outcomes. But if the data it was trained on reflects racial or economic bias, like poor patients getting less treatment in the past, the system might keep repeating those unfair patterns. A patient in real need may be ranked lower just because people like them were ignored before. If doctors trust the system without checking, someone may be left untreated. This also happens in hiring. Companies use algorithms to scan resumes. They look for keywords, formats, or job titles, but the systems may favor certain schools, styles of writing, or past job types that reflect a narrow group of people. A smart, capable person with a different background may be filtered out before a human ever sees their application. Blind trust means the recruiter never questions why that person wasn't selected. They assume the algorithm knows best. Another example is law enforcement. In some cities, police use predictive systems that tell them where crimes are likely to happen. These models use past arrest data, but if certain areas were over-policed before, they show up more in the data. The algorithm then sends more patrols to those areas, leading to more arrests and more data that says crime is high there. The cycle repeats. People in those neighborhoods get stopped more often, even if they're doing nothing wrong. The system appears fair because it's a machine, but the roots are deeply flawed. People often accept algorithmic results because they seem neutral. Machines don't have emotions. They don't lie or get tired. That gives them an image of fairness, but that's a mistake. Algorithms reflect the goals and assumptions of those who built them. If those people cut corners or ignore human context, the system may work on paper but fail in the real world. For example, a system built to recommend prison sentences may base its rules on past case data. But if courts in the past punished some groups more harshly, the algorithm will suggest the same. If a judge trusts it blindly, injustice grows. Algorithms can also be too simple. They reduce complex human situations into numbers or categories. For example, a mental health app might use an algorithm to suggest therapy or medication based on how someone answers a few questions. But those answers may not capture what's really going on. A person may be hiding pain or may not understand their own symptoms. A therapist could catch this by noticing tone, body language, or hesitations. An algorithm cannot. If doctors or patients trust the app without thinking, the wrong treatment may be chosen. Even in everyday life, this trust can cause harm. Consider navigation apps. They show the fastest route based on traffic data, but they might send drivers through unsafe streets or busy school zones just to save 2 minutes. Drivers who follow the app without thinking may end up lost, delayed, or in danger. In some cities, heavy use of these apps has disrupted quiet neighborhoods with traffic jams. The algorithm does not consider who lives there. It only cares about speed. Human awareness matters. Without it, people become tools of the system. There's also a risk of giving algorithms too much power. If someone loses a loan, a job, or a place in school because of a system's decision, they may not have anyone to talk to. There may be no explanation, no appeal, no human review. This can create feelings of helplessness and distrust. People deserve to know why decisions are made about them. They deserve to be treated as more than data points. When systems hide behind complexity or refuse to be questioned, they become dangerous. Blind trust grows when people stop asking how systems work. Companies may hide how algorithms are built. Governance may avoid oversight. Some systems are so complex that even the creators can't fully explain their choices, but that doesn't mean we should accept them without doubt. In high-stakes areas like justice, medicine, and education, human judgment must stay involved. People should not give up their role just because a machine seems faster or smarter. Take the case of Sammy, a student applying to a university. The school uses a scoring system to decide who gets in. Sammy has strong grades and leadership experience. But he comes from a rural area, and his school didn't offer many advanced courses. The algorithm ranks him low. He is rejected. No one reads his essay or sees his story. The decision feels cold. If someone had looked deeper, they might have seen his potential. But the system moved too fast, and no one questioned it. Trusting algorithms is not always wrong. They can help in many ways. But when that trust becomes blind, we stop thinking for ourselves. We ignore details, stories, and human lives. We treat people like data and allow systems to act without care. The danger is not just error, it is the loss of human judgment. Systems should support decisions, not replace them. When we forget that, we risk becoming machines ourselves. Tribal polarization is the mindset where people divide the world into two sides, us and them. It turns politics, identity, and belief into a kind of war. In this state, people stop listening to others. They stop trusting those who are different. They assume the other side is not just wrong, but dangerous. Over time, this mindset poisons public life. It makes compromise feel like betrayal. It breaks down the ability to work together. It pushes people to value loyalty over truth and emotion over reason. This type of thinking grows in times of stress. When people feel uncertain, afraid, or ignored, they look for clear sides to join. A tribe offers safety, belonging, and a simple story. That story usually says, "We are right and they are wrong. We are good and they are bad." This division can form around many things: race, religion, class, party, or even lifestyle. Once formed, it feeds itself. Each side repeats its story. Each side believes it's under attack. Each side becomes blind to its own faults. In politics, tribal polarization shows up when people vote not based on policy, but on identity. They support their party no matter what it does. They see criticism as a threat. They excuse corruption, ignore facts, or rewrite history to protect their group. They believe the other side cheats, lies, or wants to destroy the country. This can lead to gridlock in government. Laws stop being tools to solve problems and become weapons to punish enemies. Debate turns into shouting. Elections become tests of loyalty, not judgment. The media plays a strong role in fueling this divide. News outlets often pick a side and shape stories to please their base. They highlight conflict, play up outrage, and avoid nuance. Social media makes it worse. Algorithms feed people more of what they already believe. Echo chambers form. People block or attack those who disagree. They stop seeing them as neighbors and start seeing them as threats. Over time, this shapes how people think, not just what they think. Imagine someone named Amir. He used to follow the news from many sources. He liked to talk with friends who had different views. But over time, He started following only voices that agreed with him. He joined online groups that mocked the other side. When someone challenged him, he called them a liar. He stopped reading full articles. He shared headlines that confirmed what he already believed. He felt proud to defend his side, but he also felt more angry, more afraid, and more alone. The tribe gave him purpose, but it also closed his mind. Tribal polarization also affects schools, workplaces, and families. People start avoiding hard conversations. They feel tense around those with different beliefs. In some cases, they cut ties completely. They assume that anyone who disagrees must also be ignorant or cruel. Nuance disappears. A person is either with you or against you. This damages friendships. It divides cities. It weakens trust. In extreme cases, tribal thinking leads to violence. History gives many examples. When identity becomes a weapon, people start to justify harm. They say the other group is evil or inhuman. They spread rumors, pass unfair laws, or look away when abuse happens. Once people stop seeing others as people, cruelty becomes easier. Violence is not the start of the problem. It is the end result of long, slow division. But tribal polarization is not only about hate. Sometimes it starts with fear. People worry that their way of life is under threat. They worry that their values are being erased. They feel unheard or left behind. Instead of finding new solutions, they look for someone to blame. The tribe gives them a sense of power. But it often distracts them from the real causes of their pain. A factory closes, and they blame a cultural enemy, not the company. A storm hits, and they blame the government, not climate change. The tribe gives answers, but not always the right ones. In some countries, leaders make use of this mindset. They rise to power by stoking fear, mocking opponents, and promising to fight for their side. They speak in simple terms, strong and clear. They avoid compromise. They reward loyalty over skill. They cast doubt on courts, experts, or facts that don't support them. Their goal is not to unite, but to dominate. In tribal politics, power is the prize and the proof. Consider a town split between two groups. Each group has its own schools, its own shops, even its own news. They used to work together, but now they distrust each other. A local issue comes up: how to fix the roads. Instead of solving it, each side blames the other. They spread lies, hold protests, and vote down each other's plans. The roads get worse. The people suffer. But the leaders say it's their fault, not ours. That's how tribal polarization works. It stops progress and replaces it with blame. This divide also weakens democracy. A healthy democracy needs debate, respect, and compromise. Tribal politics replaces these with suspicion, rage, and stubbornness. It punishes bridge builders and rewards those who stir division. It turns citizens into fans, cheering for a side. This makes it easier for bad leaders to stay in power. If people care more about winning than about truth, lies become easy to spread. If people fear the other side more than they love their country, laws can be broken in the name of loyalty. Tribal polarization can also harm young people. They grow up in a world where difference is danger. They learn to hide their views or attack others. Schools become battlegrounds. Social groups form around who believes what, not who is kind or honest. This trains a new generation to see disagreement as war. It takes away the tools of discussion and replaces them with slogans. The ability to live in a mixed society, to learn from others, to disagree with respect, all of that fades. It's possible to care about your group without hating others. But tribal polarization does not allow that. It pushes people to take a side and stay there. It says that reaching across the line is weakness. It punishes doubt. It treats questions as betrayal. It turns complex issues into simple fights, and in doing so, it makes society weaker. It breaks the ties that hold people together. It makes the world feel smaller, colder, and more hostile. When belief becomes armor and identity becomes a battlefield, everyone loses, even those who think they're winning. Conspiracy thinking is the belief that hidden, powerful, and often evil forces control major events. It says that nothing is as it seems, and that official stories are lies meant to hide the truth. This way of thinking can take many forms. Some people believe that elections are fake, that diseases are planned, or that secret groups control the world. At its core, conspiracy thinking replaces facts with suspicion and turns confusion into paranoia. This mindset usually begins with doubt. When people feel powerless or confused, they search for answers. The world is full of problems: war, poverty, pandemics, corruption. These problems often have complex causes, but conspiracy theories offer simple ones. Instead of many factors, there is one hidden hand. Instead of chance or failure, there is a plan. This can feel comforting. It gives people someone to blame. It creates the feeling that they understand what others don't. Take someone named Faison. He loses his job during an economic crash. He sees rich people getting richer, but his own life gets harder. He hears that a small group of elites controls the banks, the media, and the government. At first, he's unsure, but the more he watches videos and reads posts, the more it makes sense to him. Each new fact he sees, he fits into the story. If the news says the economy is recovering, he says it's a lie. If a friend questions him, he says they're brainwashed. Over time, Faison starts to believe everything is fake, except the theory he follows. Conspiracy thinking works like this. Once someone accepts the idea, they explain everything through it. If evidence supports it, they accept it. If it doesn't, they say the evidence is part of the cover-up. This makes the belief nearly impossible to challenge. Logic breaks down. Doubt becomes proof. Denial becomes strength. In this world, anyone who disagrees is either a fool or a traitor. Social media helps conspiracy theories grow. Algorithms reward content that shocks or scares. Posts with strong emotion spread faster. A simple lie can travel further than a complex truth. People get trapped in echo chambers where only one version of reality is shown. They stop trusting experts or institutions. Instead, they follow influencers who speak with certainty, even when they're wrong. These influencers gain status and money by feeding the story. The more extreme their message, the more attention they get. This mindset damages public life. It makes it hard to solve real problems. For example, during a public health crisis, some people might refuse medicine or vaccines because they believe the system is trying to harm them. They think doctors are part of a plot. They mistrust science and reject expert advice. This doesn't just hurt them, it hurts others too. A virus spreads faster when people ignore safety rules. Hospitals get overwhelmed. Conspiracy thinking turns personal belief into public danger. In politics, it gets worse. If people believe elections are rigged, they may stop voting, or worse, they may try to overturn the result. They may see their political opponents not just as wrong, but as evil. They may believe violence is justified. In some countries, this has led to attacks on lawmakers, protests based on lies, and deep division. Leaders who support conspiracy theories often use fear to gain power. They don't offer solutions, they offer enemies. This keeps people angry, loyal, and afraid to question. History shows how dangerous this can be. In many times and places, conspiracy theories have fueled hate. Groups have been blamed for disasters, disease, or war based on false claims. These lies have led to violence, persecution, and even genocide. When people believe that others are secretly working to destroy them, they stop seeing them as human. They see them as threats to be removed. Conspiracy thinking often hides under the cover of asking questions. People say they are just seeking the truth, but in many cases, they start with a belief and then look for anything to support it. They don't test ideas, they defend them. This is not true skepticism. Real skepticism checks all sides and changes when new evidence comes. Conspiracy thinking does the opposite. It picks a side and shuts out all else. Even smart, educated people can fall into this trap. Intelligence does not protect against emotional fear. When people feel uncertain or betrayed, they may turn to stories that make them feel special or aware. They may enjoy the feeling that they know more than others. They may like being part of a group that shares their views. But this often leads to isolation from the real world. It damages relationships. Families break apart. Friendships end. People lose jobs, homes, and peace of mind. It can also be exhausting. Keeping up with a large conspiracy takes work. Every news story becomes a test. Every disagreement becomes a threat. People live in constant fear or anger. They imagine enemies everywhere. Some become deeply paranoid. They stop trusting doctors, teachers, co-workers, even their own families. Their world shrinks. But instead of seeing this as a problem, they take it as proof that they're right. There's also a loss of agency. While conspiracy thinking feels like resistance, it often leads to inaction. If people believe everything is controlled by hidden forces, they may give up on real change. They might say, "Why vote? It's rigged." Or, "Why recycle? It's a scam." They stop trying to improve the world because they believe the game is fixed. This creates a cycle of anger without solutions and despair without action. But not everyone who asks hard questions is a conspiracy thinker. Healthy doubt is part of thinking clearly. It's normal to question powerful groups, media, or systems. But that doubt needs evidence, balance, and openness to change. When doubt turns into belief without proof, it crosses the line. When belief rejects all opposing views, it stops being thought. It becomes faith in fear. Imagine a woman named Anissa. She starts by watching videos about food safety. She hears some claims about chemicals in packaged food. She checks them out and finds some truth. She becomes cautious about what she eats. That's reasonable. But then she finds a group that says the government is poisoning the food on purpose. They say food labels are lies and all doctors are corrupt. She's scared, so she listens. She stops eating out. She refuses all medication. She cuts ties with anyone who questions her choices. What began as awareness turns into fear. What began as care turns into harm. Conspiracy thinking is not just about being wrong. It's about how that wrong belief changes how someone lives, how they see others, and how they act in society. It creates distrust, breaks connections, and spreads falsehood. It replaces knowledge with suspicion and turns fear into identity. The danger isn't just the belief. It's the way that belief blots truth, divides people, and feeds a world built on shadows. Misinformation normalization is the process where lies, distortions, or half-truths become accepted as just another version of reality. It happens when false claims are repeated so often that people stop questioning them. It also happens when the media or public figures treat these claims as equal to facts, as if every opinion has the same weight, even when one is based on evidence and the other is not. Over time, this weakens the public's ability to tell what's true. It makes facts seem like a matter of choice, and truth becomes just one option among many. This mindset can spread slowly. At first, someone hears a false statement, maybe a claim that vaccines don't work, or that an election was stolen. If the claim is challenged, the person might brush it off. They say, "Well, everyone lies," or "That's just their side of the story." They don't accept the false claim right away, but they don't reject it either. They put it on the same level as proven facts. This is where the damage starts. Once people believe that truth is subjective, it becomes easier to believe anything or nothing at all. Media plays a strong role in this process. In an effort to seem fair, some outlets give airtime to voices that spread misinformation. They host debates where one side brings data and the other side brings conspiracy. The format makes both seem equal. The viewer starts to think that every issue has two sides, even when one side has no facts behind it. This is not balance, it's confusion. The media's role should be to inform, not to give false claims the same respect as verified truth. Consider a public debate on climate change. One side presents decades of research, satellite data, and peer-reviewed studies. The other side says the science is fake or that climate change is a hoax. If the moderator treats both sides as equally valid, the audience may think there is a real disagreement among experts, when in fact, the scientific consensus is clear. This kind of framing teaches people to doubt clear evidence. It makes lies feel normal, and it turns falsehood into opinion. Social media speeds this up. Platforms reward content that gets attention, not content that's true. A shocking lie spreads faster than a careful explanation. Users share posts without checking facts. Algorithms promote what people react to, not what helps them understand. Over time, false claims get repeated so often that they become background noise. People grow numb. They stop checking sources. They start to say things like, "Nobody really knows what's true anymore." That is how misinformation becomes normal, not by convincing people, but by exhausting them. Imagine a man named Rizwan. He follows a few news pages on his phone. He doesn't read much, just headlines and memes. Over time, he sees the same message again and again, that the government is lying, that the media can't be trusted, that everything is fake. He starts repeating these ideas to others. He doesn't know if they're true, but he says, "It's what people are saying." He stops caring about sources. He thinks truth is whatever feels right to him. When a fact challenges his view, he calls it biased. He's not a liar, but he now lives in a world where truth has no meaning. Misinformation normalization also happens in politics. Leaders may repeat false claims until they seem familiar. Instead of apologizing for errors, they double down. Their supporters learn to defend the lie or to brush it off. They say, "All politicians lie," or "That's just what he says." Over time, lying becomes expected. Facts no longer carry weight. Loyalty matters more than truth. This damages democracy. In a healthy system, facts allow people to make informed choices. When facts collapse, people vote based on fear, anger, or identity alone. There's a cost to this way of thinking. It makes public discussion almost impossible. If two people cannot agree on what is real, they cannot solve problems together. For example, if one person believes a pandemic is real and the other thinks it is fake, they won't agree on how to stay safe. If one person trusts medical advice and the other believes it's all propaganda, they won't agree on treatment. This breakdown spreads into every part of life: education, health, law, and daily relationships. People talk past each other. They argue in circles. They stop trusting anyone who disagrees. Some people use the phrase alternative facts to defend lies. This term suggests that truth is flexible, but there is no such thing as an alternative fact. There are facts, and there are falsehoods. Mixing them together only causes confusion. If someone says the sun rises in the west, that is not another perspective. It's wrong. Treating it as equal to fact makes people lose faith in the idea of truth itself. Once misinformation becomes normal, it is hard to undo. People build their beliefs around false claims. They follow pages, join groups, and shape their identity around those ideas. If someone tries to correct them, they take it as a personal attack. They say, "You just don't get it," or "You've been fooled." This creates strong mental walls. The longer a lie is believed, the harder it is to unlearn. Even schools can fall into this trap. In some cases, teachers feel pressured to present both sides of an issue, even when one side is clearly false. They may fear backlash or accusations of bias, but teaching false balance does not serve students. It confuses them. It trains them to think that every claim deserves equal space, regardless of its truth. This weakens critical thinking. It replaces evidence with opinion. It turns education into noise. Misinformation normalization also has real-world costs. People refuse vaccines and get sick. They believe election lies and storm buildings. They spread false health advice that causes harm. These are not just opinions, they are actions based on falsehoods. Made worse because those falsehoods were treated as normal. Lies that feel familiar can still do damage. Think of a woman named Sana. She follows a wellness page that says sunscreen causes cancer. She reads it a few times and starts to believe it. She shares the post, and her friends share it too. No one checks the science. Over time, the idea spreads. Some people stop using sunscreen and get burned. A few develop skin cancer. The original post was false, but because it felt like just another view, it caused real harm. That's how normalization works, not by force, but by repetition and indifference. To live in a society where facts matter, people need to care about what's true. They need to ask questions, check sources, and hold others accountable. That doesn't mean blind trust in every claim. It means using judgment, asking for evidence, and not accepting lies just because they're common. The truth is not always easy, but it is essential. Without it, people live in separate worlds, each with their own version of reality, and no path back to shared understanding. Anti-intellectualism is the rejection of experts, education, and science. It happens when people treat knowledge with suspicion and dismiss those who study it as out of touch or arrogant. This way of thinking suggests that learning and research are not only unnecessary, but even harmful. It presents emotion and instinct as better guides than facts. In many places, anti-intellectualism has grown stronger, fueled by mistrust, fear, and resentment. The result is a society that ignores proven ideas, refuses advice, and struggles to solve complex problems. This mindset is often based on the belief that experts are part of an elite class. People start to say that scientists, professors, and researchers don't live in the real world. They think these experts look down on ordinary people, or that they are part of a system designed to keep others down. Instead of seeing education as a tool for understanding, they see it as a wall that separates people. They begin to say things like, "I trust common sense, not some professor," or "book smarts don't matter if you don't have real-world experience." Consider someone named Javed. He works hard, provides for his family, and has strong views about life. He watches the news and hears experts talk about economics, climate, and health. Their words are full of technical terms. He feels talked down to. Over time, he grows tired of being told what to do by people with degrees. When he hears a politician or influencer say that experts are liars, Javed feels understood. He begins to doubt everything that comes from universities, research labs, or official channels. He says, "They don't get us," and starts to treat knowledge as just another opinion. This attitude can show up in many places. In schools, students may ask why they need to learn science or history. They see education as boring or pointless. In communities, parents may refuse vaccines for their children because they don't trust doctors. In politics, leaders may mock experts, ignore data, and make decisions based on personal belief. In each case, the message is the same. Knowledge is not to be trusted. Social media spreads this message fast. Platforms give everyone a voice, which can be good, but they also blur the line between expert and amateur. A scientist may spend years researching a topic. A stranger with a camera can post a video that says the opposite. If the video is emotional or simple, people may believe it more than the science. Algorithms push what grabs attention, not what's true. Over time, people start to think that education doesn't matter. They believe that being loud or confident is just as good as being right. Anti-intellectualism also grows when people feel left behind. If someone has struggled in school or feels ignored by educated people, they may begin to see learning as the enemy. If a person works long hours and sees others gain status through education, they may feel resentment. They might say, "I didn't go to college, but I know how the world works." This can be true in many cases. Life teaches important lessons, but it can also feed anger toward those who study for a living. In politics, This mindset is often used as a tool. Some leaders build support by attacking experts. They say scientists are lying, journalists are fake, and professors are corrupt. This gives their followers a sense of power. It says, you know more than they do. It replaces fact with feeling. A leader who ignores science may seem bold. A politician who rejects advice may look strong. But over time, this weakens public trust and leads to poor decisions. Take the example of climate change. The vast majority of scientists agree that human activity is warming the planet. The data is clear, the effects are visible, and the risks are high. But some leaders reject this view. They say the science is flawed or that it's a plot to control people. Their followers cheer. They say, we don't need experts to tell us the weather. As a result, needed action is delayed. Problems get worse. The cost of ignoring knowledge grows. This problem is not limited to science. In health, education, law, and technology, expert input helps society work. If people reject that input, they may end up making harmful choices. For example, if someone with diabetes believes an online rumor over a doctor's advice, they may stop taking medicine. If a town rejects engineers' advice about safe building codes, they may face disaster. When knowledge is treated as opinion, risk increases. Even art and culture feel the effect. Some say that reading literature, studying philosophy, or learning history is a waste of time. They see these subjects as useless or elitist. But these fields teach us how to think, how to argue, and how to understand other people. They help build a thoughtful, informed society. When they are dismissed, something important is lost. A country that no longer values ideas becomes shallow. Its culture weakens. Its debates become empty. Anti-intellectualism can also harm young people. When adults reject education, children may learn to do the same. They stop asking questions. They stop seeking answers. They see learning as punishment instead of growth. This narrows their future. It also limits the future of the society they will inherit. A country that doesn't invest in thinking will fall behind. This way of thinking may feel empowering at first. It says, you don't need them. You already know enough. But it leaves people vulnerable. Without expert help, it's harder to fix cars, cure disease, grow food, or run cities. Trusting real knowledge is not about being controlled. It's about staying alive and moving forward. Imagine someone named Zara. She is sick, but doesn't believe in doctors. She follows online advice and ignores science. At first, she feels strong, but her condition worsens. The people she trusted online have no answers. In the end, she turns to the same experts she once mocked. Her story shows that rejecting knowledge does not stop the need for it. Anti-intellectualism does not come from stupidity. It often comes from pain, pride, or fear. It is a reaction to a world that feels too complex or unfair. But that reaction can become dangerous. A society cannot solve hard problems without knowledge. It cannot grow without learning. Dismissing experts does not make their work less true. It only makes the truth harder to find. And when truth is lost, everyone pays the price. Perpetual victimhood is a mindset where a person sees themselves as constantly wronged, mistreated, or misunderstood by others. It becomes the lens through which they view the world. No matter the situation, they believe they are always the target of unfairness. This belief system offers comfort because it removes responsibility. If one is always the victim, then they are never at fault. But over time, this way of thinking can damage relationships, block personal growth, and shut down honest dialogue. People who fall into this mindset often begin with real experiences of hurt or injustice. They may have faced hardship, exclusion, or discrimination. These experiences leave marks, and those marks shape how they interpret new situations. If something goes wrong, a job loss, a friendship ending, a disagreement, They assume it must be because they are being mistreated again. The problem in their mind is always someone else. While the initial pain may be valid, the habit of framing every new problem as another act of oppression leads to distortion. Consider someone named Aisha. She works in a large office. Early in her career, she was overlooked for a promotion, and she felt the decision was unfair. Since then, whenever a colleague gets praise or leadership opportunities, she assumes it's because the system is biased against her. She stops asking for feedback or trying new things. She tells herself the workplace is rigged, and nothing she does will change it. Over time, her performance drops, but when this is pointed out, she sees it as further proof of the system's bias. In her eyes, she is always being held back, even when some of the setbacks come from choices she made. This way of thinking often resists correction. When someone challenges it, they are seen as part of the problem. A person in this mindset might say, "You just don't understand what I've been through," or "It's easy for you to say that." These statements may carry some truth, especially when there's a real difference in background or experience, but they can also block conversation. They push people away instead of inviting them in. When every disagreement is treated as an attack, discussion stops. There's no space left for growth or repair. In group settings, this becomes even more complicated. Sometimes, communities that have faced real oppression begin to define themselves entirely by that struggle. Pain becomes central to identity. Any call for accountability is seen as betrayal. Leaders who question this mindset risk being labeled as insensitive or disloyal. As a result, honest reflection becomes difficult. People feel pressure to repeat the group's story, even if it no longer fits their experience. There's also a danger of turning suffering into competition. People start comparing how much they've been hurt. Instead of listening and supporting each other, they try to prove that their pain is deeper or more valid. This creates division instead of unity. It weakens solidarity. When everyone wants to be seen as the most wronged, it becomes harder to recognize anyone's progress or resilience. In politics, this mindset can be used as a tool. Leaders or movements may paint themselves as victims to avoid criticism. They say, "The media is against us," or "Everyone wants us to fail." They use these claims to shut down questions. They present themselves as under constant attack, even when they hold power. This strategy works because it creates loyalty through fear. Supporters are told that if they question the leader, they are helping the enemy. Truth becomes less important than allegiance. In the end, the narrative of victimhood protects those in charge from being held accountable. Even in personal relationships, perpetual victimhood causes harm. It makes communication difficult. If one person always sees themselves as the victim, they cannot admit mistakes. They cannot apologize. If they hurt someone else, they say, "I only acted that way because of what you did to me." They may expect others to fix the relationship while refusing to look at their own role. This puts strain on friends, partners, and family. Over time, those around them feel drained, unable to speak freely or address real issues. This mindset also blocks self-growth. If someone believes that all their problems come from outside forces, they stop looking inward. They stop asking what they could change, improve, or do differently. They stop learning from failure. Every challenge becomes a confirmation of their belief that the world is unfair. While it may protect their sense of self, it limits their ability to adapt and thrive. Growth comes from facing hard truths and making changes. That is not possible if someone refuses to take any responsibility. It's important to make a clear distinction here. Real victimhood exists. Many people face discrimination, violence, or injustice. Acknowledging this is essential. The danger comes not from recognizing harm, but from turning harm into a fixed identity. When someone says, "I was hurt and that matters," they are opening the door to healing. But when they say, "I am always hurt and I will never be anything else," they are closing that door. The first creates space for change. The second locks it shut. Think about someone named Bilal. He struggled in school because of a learning disability that went undiagnosed. For years, teachers called him lazy. He grew up feeling ashamed. Later, he found support, started reading again, and developed new skills. But instead of moving forward, he holds on to the past. Every challenge at work becomes a reminder of how people used to treat him. Every new task feels like a threat. He tells himself he's not the problem, it's the world. He stops trying to improve, even though he has the tools now. His past pain is real, but his refusal to move beyond it holds him back. Perpetual victimhood is not just a personal issue, it becomes a social one. When groups or individuals refuse to engage in honest self-reflection, they make it harder for others to trust them. People begin to tune out real concerns because they are buried under exaggerated ones. Dialogue suffers, empathy fades. Instead of finding common ground, people stay stuck in cycles of blame. Everyone wants to be heard, but no one wants to listen. There is nothing wrong with naming injustice. In fact, that is often the first step toward change. But growth depends on what comes next. If someone only focuses on how they've been wronged, they miss the chance to see how they can rise. Being a victim may not be a choice, but staying one sometimes is. When people learn to own their part in a situation, they take back control. They become not just survivors, but agents of change. That shift matters. It turns hurt into strength and opens the path to something better. Success equals wealth only. That idea has shaped the way many people see the world. It teaches that money, power, and social status are the only measures that matter. If you earn more, own more, and appear important, you are successful. If not, you are falling behind. This narrow view ignores deeper parts of life: purpose, health, service, curiosity, and connection. It turns life into a race, not a journey. And for many, that race leads to burnout, emptiness, or regret. This belief often starts early. Children hear adults praise people with big houses, luxury cars, or fancy job titles. Schools push students toward careers with high income rather than ones that match their interests or strengths. Parents worry more about grades and future salaries than about what brings their child peace or fulfillment. Over time, the message becomes clear. Your worth is based on what you earn and how high you climb. Imagine a man named Zain. He studied finance, worked long hours, and quickly rose in his company. He now makes more money than most of his peers. On paper, he is successful, but he rarely sees his family. He doesn't enjoy his work. He wakes up anxious and sleeps poorly. Still, he keeps going because slowing down would feel like failure. He has built his life around a single measure: income. To stop chasing it feels like throwing it all away. In this mindset, people who make less money are seen as less valuable. A school teacher, social worker, or nurse may work hard, help others, and find deep meaning in their roles. But because their pay is modest, they are often seen as less successful than someone in tech or finance. This view distorts what really matters. It sends the message that worth is about numbers, not impact. It treats income as identity. This belief also causes people to choose jobs they dislike. A person may have a passion for writing, music, or craftsmanship, but if those paths are seen as risky or low-paying, they are pushed aside. The person picks a safe career. They earn well, but feel dull and restless. They may dream of doing something different, but feel trapped by the expectations of others and their own fear of being seen as a failure. Social media makes this worse. People show their vacations, cars, designer clothes, and awards. These posts become the yardstick for success, but they rarely show the full picture. They don't show the stress, loneliness, or doubt behind the scenes. Still, others scroll through these images and feel less than. They begin to think they must keep up, no matter the cost. They forget that some forms of success cannot be photographed. This view of success also feeds harmful behavior. Some people take on debt to appear wealthy. Others work non-stop, sacrificing sleep, family, and health. Some use shortcuts, cheating, lying, or stepping on others to get ahead. When money becomes the only goal, ethics often lose. The result is a culture where people are valued for what they own, not who they are. Now think about someone named Amina. She runs a small bakery in her town. She doesn't make much, but she loves her work. Her customers know her by name. She spends her evenings with her children and volunteers on weekends. She feels connected, useful, and at peace. Yet in some eyes, she's not successful because she isn't rich. This shows the flaw in the idea. Amina's life has purpose and joy, but it doesn't fit the image of success shaped by wealth alone. Success based on wealth also ignores well-being. Many high earners suffer from anxiety, depression, or burnout. They have the money, but not the balance. They stay in jobs they hate, afraid to lose their status. Some turn to alcohol, drugs, or other escapes to deal with pressure. Others become emotionally distant or lose touch with who they were before they started chasing money. The outer success hides inner pain. At the same time, this mindset downplays contribution. A janitor who keeps a school clean, a farmer who grows food, or a mechanic who fixes cars may not earn much, but without them, society doesn't function. Their work matters deeply. But if we define success by salary alone, we ignore the value they bring. That weakens our respect for essential roles and leads to a society where only the rich are seen. This idea also harms young people. If they believe they must become rich to matter, they feel pressure to choose certain careers, live in certain ways, or measure their worth by likes and shares. They may avoid risks, silence their curiosity, or fake a version of themselves that fits what others admire. When they fail to meet these goals, they feel ashamed. They think they've failed not just in a job, but in life. Measuring success by wealth also causes inequality to seem natural. If the rich are seen as better, then the poor must be blamed for their own situation. It becomes easier to ignore those who struggle. People say they should have worked harder, or they made bad choices, without knowing the full story. Poverty becomes a mark of failure, not a sign of deeper social problems. This blocks compassion and divides people. Even in relationships, this belief takes a toll. Some choose partners based on income or status. Others feel ashamed if they can't provide certain luxuries. Conversations about meaning, values, or dreams take a backseat to talk of success and image. Over time, this weakens intimacy and makes connection harder. Love becomes conditional on success. But success can mean many things. For one person, it may mean starting a school. For another, raising kind children. For another, writing a book, healing from trauma, or growing a garden. These forms of success don't always bring fame or money, but they bring meaning, and meaning lasts longer than status. There's nothing wrong with wanting to earn well or live comfortably. Money can bring safety, freedom, and support. But when it becomes the only goal, life shrinks. People lose sight of who they are, what they value, and what gives life depth. Success should not be a single path. It should be shaped by purpose, not just pay. A society that equates success with wealth alone builds a shallow model of achievement. It forgets the teacher who shaped lives, the artist who moved hearts, or the caregiver who brought comfort. It forgets that success is not just about reaching the top, but about doing what matters, with care, integrity, and joy. When people are free to define success for themselves, they live more fully, work more honestly, and connect more deeply. That kind of success may not always show up in numbers, but it leaves a lasting mark. Short-termism is the habit of focusing only on immediate results. It means chasing quick rewards and ignoring long-term effects. This way of thinking appears in business, politics, education, health, and everyday choices. It values speed over depth, profit over sustainability, and appearance over reality. While short-term wins can feel good, they often come with hidden costs. Over time, those costs add up, and create deeper problems that are harder to solve. In business, short-termism often shows up in how companies operate. A company might cut costs by laying off workers or reducing product quality just to meet this quarter's financial targets. The move pleases investors and boosts stock prices, for now. But over time, these decisions can damage employee morale, harm the brand, and reduce customer loyalty. The company might save money today, but lose trust tomorrow. When leadership is focused only on quarterly earnings, they neglect research, innovation, or long-term strategy. The result is a weaker, less resilient business. Politics follows a similar pattern. Leaders often make decisions that bring fast approval, even if those choices create problems down the line. For example, a government might lower taxes or increase public spending during an election year to win votes. The move feels good to voters, but it increases debt or reduces services in the future. Or a leader may delay action on climate change because the results won't be seen within their term. They focus on short-term popularity rather than long-term impact. This makes it hard to solve complex issues that need consistent, long-range planning. Short-termism also shows up in education. Schools may focus more on test scores than actual learning. Teachers are pushed to teach for exams instead of fostering deep understanding or critical thinking. Students memorize facts to pass rather than learning how to think, solve, or create. The system rewards short-term results, high grades, quick answers over lasting growth. This leads to students who may do well in the moment, but struggle in real-world situations that require depth, patience, and adaptability. In health, this mindset causes people to pick quick fixes over lasting habits. Someone might choose fast food because it saves time, even though it harms their body over the years. Or they might avoid exercise because it takes effort now, ignoring the long-term benefit. In medicine, a patient may want pills for pain rather than addressing the root cause. Doctors may rush through appointments to see more patients in less time. Everyone wants relief today, even if it delays healing. This leads to chronic issues that could have been prevented with early care and consistent habits. Think about someone named Hassan. He wants to lose weight. Instead of changing his eating or exercise habits, he looks for a crash diet. He loses weight fast, but feels weak and gains it all back a month later. He tries again using a new trick. Each time, he avoids the hard, slow work of building lasting health. His obsession with fast results keeps him stuck. The cycle continues because the long path feels too slow, even though it's the only one that works. Short-termism is also visible in how people treat the environment. Companies clear forests, pollute rivers, or overuse land for quick profit. Governments allow this because it creates jobs and income now, but the long-term cost, lost species, climate damage, poisoned water, grows with each decision. Once these resources are gone, recovery is difficult or impossible. The focus on now ignores the needs of future generations. It trades long-term health for short-term gain. This mindset even affects how we relate to others. People avoid hard conversations because they feel uncomfortable. They choose to block someone instead of resolving a conflict. They end relationships when problems arise instead of working through them. These choices provide quick relief, but often leave deeper issues untouched. Over time, the habit of avoiding discomfort weakens emotional strength and trust. Real connection takes time, patience, and effort, none of which come quickly. Technology increases the pull of short-termism. Apps, games, and social media reward us for fast reactions. Notifications bring instant attention. Metrics like likes, views, and shares measure success in a moment. This trains people to want feedback now and avoid anything slow. People may give up on projects, hobbies, or relationships that don't offer fast rewards. They begin to expect everything: success, love, fame, knowledge, to come quickly or not at all. Short-term thinking also limits how people set goals. Someone may chase a raise or promotion without thinking about whether the job fits their values. They might buy things they can't afford for the sake of appearance. They want to feel accomplished right now, even if it traps them in debt or dissatisfaction later. They measure success by speed and surface, not by depth or meaning. This creates a life that looks good briefly, but doesn't hold up over time. Imagine a city that wants to build housing. Instead of investing in durable, well-designed buildings, they choose cheaper materials and faster construction to meet a deadline. The buildings go up quickly, and the city claims success. But after a few years, the walls crack, pipes leak, and residents face problems. The city now has to spend even more to fix what was done poorly the first time. The short-term win becomes a long-term failure. Short-termism often spreads because it's easy to measure. Numbers like sales, followers, votes, or grades give clear signals. Long-term value is harder to see. It takes years to measure the effect of a teacher, the benefit of a tree, or the strength of a good policy. When people value what they can count today, they ignore what grows quietly over time. They skip the slow work that creates real stability and success. This way of thinking also discourages risk-taking in a healthy way. People avoid investing in big ideas, new research, or hard reforms because the payoff is uncertain or far away. They fear failure now more than regret later. So they settle for quick fixes, repeat old patterns, and avoid bold steps. Over time, this makes systems stale. Innovation slows, progress stalls, society becomes reactive instead of forward-looking. A balanced approach means thinking about both today and tomorrow. Short-term steps are not wrong by themselves. The problem comes when they are all that matter. When people, companies, or governments care only about what pays off fast, they leave behind deeper needs. They miss the chance to build something lasting. They trade meaning for momentum, and that trade rarely ends well. It takes patience to plant a tree, raise a child, build a business, or repair a system. None of those come with quick applause, but they shape a better future. Without long-term thinking, the present becomes a trap, not a foundation. Fatalism is the belief that the future is fixed and that nothing a person does can change what will happen. It says that outcomes are already set, so action is pointless. This mindset leads to passivity, frustration, and detachment. People stop trying, not because they are lazy, but because they believe trying won't matter. Whether it's personal goals, social change, or global problems, fatalism teaches that effort is useless. This belief often grows out of disappointment. When someone works hard and still fails, they may start to think life is beyond their control. When institutions fail to deliver justice or fairness, people may begin to doubt that anything will ever improve. If every protest ends in silence, every vote feels wasted, or every kind word is ignored, the message becomes clear: nothing works. At that point, people stop expecting change. They stop fighting for it. Fatalism sets in not all at once, but step by step. Take the example of Fahim. He has tried to find steady work for years. He sends out resumes, learns new skills, and takes low-paying jobs to stay afloat. But nothing sticks. Each time he thinks he's making progress, something goes wrong: layoffs, illness, or family emergencies. After a while, he stops applying for jobs with hope. He still goes through the motions, but deep down, he believes it won't matter. When someone tells him to keep trying, he shrugs and says, "What's the point?" His belief in effort has faded. That is fatalism. In politics, fatalism can silence entire communities. If people think the system is corrupt or rigged, they may choose not to vote. They believe that the powerful will always win, no matter what the people do. They stop writing to representatives, stop joining protests, and stop following the news. Even if policies affect their lives, they feel no ownership. They become spectators, not participants. This weakens democracy. It gives more power to those already in control because no one is pushing back. Fatalism also affects social change. Some people believe that racism, inequality, or violence are just facts of life. They may agree these things are wrong, but feel they will never go away. They say, "It's always been like this," or "You can't change human nature." These statements may sound wise, but they shut the door to progress. They make injustice seem natural instead of chosen. Once people accept that the world can't change, they stop trying to make it better. In education, this mindset can limit students. A child who grows up in a poor neighborhood may hear that people like them don't succeed. They may see older siblings struggle and parents burned out. If teachers expect little of them, they may expect little of themselves. They might think, "Why try if I'll just fail anyway?" Even when chances appear, they may not take them. Fatalism doesn't just kill hope, it blocks action before it begins. It also affects health. A person with chronic illness may believe they will never feel better, so they stop taking care of themselves. Someone who wants to lose weight may give up after a few setbacks and decide their body can't change. A person with depression may start to think their sadness will last forever. They may say, "This is just how I am," instead of looking for help. Fatalism creates a loop. The belief that nothing will improve makes improvement less likely. Even in personal relationships, fatalism plays a role. A person who has been hurt many times may stop trusting others. They believe every relationship will end badly, so they stop trying to connect. They might say, "People always leave," or "Love never lasts." These beliefs protect them from disappointment, but also keep them alone. They avoid conflict because they think it won't lead to healing. They give up on change because they fear more pain. Sometimes fatalism hides under the idea of realism. People say they're just being honest about how the world works. They believe they're not cynical, just practical. But realism looks at facts and asks what can still be done. Fatalism assumes there's nothing left to do. Realism works with limits. Fatalism submits to them. The difference lies in the response. A realist says, "This will be hard, but let's try." A fatalist says, "This is how it is. Nothing will help." There's also a cultural side. In some places, fatalism is taught from a young age. People are told their destiny is fixed by birth, class, or fate. If they are poor, they must stay poor. If they are sick, they must suffer. Religion is sometimes used to support this, though many traditions also teach that human action matters. When fate becomes an excuse, it allows those in power to avoid responsibility. It turns submission into virtue. Technology and media also influence this mindset. News outlets often highlight problems without showing solutions. Stories of failure, crisis, or disaster get more attention than stories of change. Social media spreads fear and despair faster than hope. People are flooded with reasons to give up. They see corruption, violence, and suffering again and again. They may start to think the world is falling apart and nothing can be done. When every headline is bad, it's easy to believe that trying is a waste. Think about Syra, a student who wants to become a doctor. She comes from a struggling family and studies in a school with few resources. Her teachers tell her she's smart, but she looks around and sees poverty, illness, and dropout rates. Her cousin gave up on her dreams last year. Her father says life is about survival, not dreams. Slowly, she starts to doubt her path. She still studies, but not with hope. She begins to say, "Maybe it's not for people like me." Her belief in her own future starts to fade, not because she isn't capable, but because she no longer believes change is possible. Fatalism offers one big thing: relief. It takes away the burden of effort. If nothing can be changed, then you are free from trying. You don't have to face failure, because you never risk anything. But that relief is thin. It turns life into something you watch, not something you shape. It leaves you passive in the face of problems, even the ones that could be solved. It keeps you from testing your strength, learning from setbacks, or building anything real. Believing that nothing can change is a belief, not a fact. Change is slow, hard, and uneven. It takes time and often fails before it works. But it happens. History shows this again and again. People have ended wars, cured diseases, fought injustice, and rebuilt lives. These changes came not from belief in fate, but from belief in effort. Not everything can be changed, but far more can be changed than fatalism allows. The danger lies not in the size of the problem, but in the belief that no response is worth trying. The infinite growth delusion is the belief that economies can expand forever on a planet with limited resources. It assumes that more production, more consumption, and more profit are always possible and always good. This idea shapes how governments plan budgets, how companies measure success, and how people define progress. But the Earth has clear boundaries. Land, water, air, minerals, and ecosystems are not endless. When growth ignores those limits, the result is environmental damage, social inequality, and long-term instability. This belief began during the Industrial Age, when machines and fossil fuels made it possible to produce more than ever before. For a while, it worked. Populations grew, incomes rose, and many people gained better lives. Economic growth became the main goal of modern life. Leaders promised better futures through constant expansion. If the economy grew, they said everyone would benefit. More jobs, more wealth, more comfort. But that model depends on using energy, raw materials, and land at increasing rates. Every new factory, road, or device takes something from the earth. Forests are cleared, oceans are fished, soil is mined, and air is filled with carbon. These things don't renew quickly. Some don't renew at all. When they run out, or when they break, the system that depends on them begins to fail. Consider a city that wants to grow its economy by building more housing and attracting more businesses. It paves over farmland, increases traffic, and demands more energy. In the short term, this brings jobs and tax revenue. But over time, the loss of green space raises temperatures. Air and water quality decline. Roads become crowded. The city becomes less livable. Growth, once seen as progress, starts to harm the very people it was meant to help. On a larger scale, this shows up in climate change. Burning fossil fuels has powered global growth for over a century, but it also pumps carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. The more we burn, the more the climate shifts. Rising temperatures cause floods, droughts, fires, and rising seas. These effects destroy homes, crops, and lives. Still, many governments push for more oil drilling, more factories, more highways. They say the economy must grow, even if the planet suffers. This belief is also tied to how we measure success. Most countries use gross domestic product, or GDP, to track progress. GDP counts all economic activity. If more money is spent on cars, phones, or hospital visits, GDP goes up. It doesn't matter if the spending comes from good or bad things. A traffic accident that sends someone to the hospital adds to GDP. So does a wildfire that requires disaster response. In this system, growth always looks good, even when it comes from damage or crisis. People also feel this pressure in daily life. A person is expected to upgrade their phone, expand their home, or buy more clothes. A company is expected to grow profits every year. A country is expected to raise production no matter what. If something doesn't grow, it's seen as weak or broken. But this constant push for more creates stress. It encourages waste, fast fashion, planned obsolescence, and a throwaway culture. It tells people they're only doing well if they're consuming more. The earth tells a different story. Forests need time to grow. Soil needs time to rest. Fish need time to reproduce. There is a limit to how much water can be drawn from rivers or how much pollution the air can absorb. These limits are not opinions. They are facts of nature. When we ignore them, systems collapse, species vanish, crops fail, weather becomes more extreme. The illusion of infinite growth hides the reality of ecological breakdown. Take the case of oceans. For decades, fishing fleets have used larger nets, faster boats, and more advanced tools to catch more fish. At first, catches increased, but as fish populations fell, fleets had to travel farther and fish deeper. Now many species are at risk. Some have collapsed completely. Still, Some companies push for more expansion, believing new technology will solve the problem. But no machine can replace a missing species. Once a population is gone, it may never come back. The same is true for forests. Trees store carbon, protect water, and support life, but they are often cleared for farms, roads, or development. Each cleared forest brings short-term gain, more land, more jobs, more timber, but long-term loss, less rainfall, more erosion, higher carbon levels. Replanting helps, but a young tree does not replace an old forest. Nature has depth and time that machines cannot copy. Supporters of growth often say that innovation will fix these limits. They believe new technologies, green energy, lab-grown meat, or recycling, can keep the system going. These tools help, but they are not enough if growth keeps rising. Solar panels still need rare minerals. Wind farms still use land. Even the cleanest tech takes energy and resources. Innovation matters, but it must be paired with restraint. Otherwise, we simply shift the pressure from one resource to another. Imagine a person named Sarah. She opens a business selling reusable cups to reduce plastic waste. Her product becomes popular. Investors tell her to grow fast, open new stores, expand overseas, cut costs. She faces a choice: grow the business beyond her original values or stay small and steady. If she chooses constant growth, she may start using cheaper materials or wasteful shipping. If she resists, she may be seen as a failure by business standards. This is how the system pressures even good ideas to grow in harmful ways. Some people say that stopping growth means going backward. They fear poverty, job loss, or decline. But there's a difference between growth and well-being. A society can stay stable in size while still improving life. People can have clean air, good health, strong communities, and fulfilling work without constant expansion. This idea is called a steady-state economy, where the goal is balance, not endless growth. It means using resources wisely, sharing fairly, and planning for the long term. Endless growth on a finite planet is not just risky, it's impossible. At some point, the system breaks. The question is whether we choose to slow down with care or crash because we refuse to change. Growth is not bad in itself. It has lifted millions from poverty and brought many gains. But when it becomes the only goal, it blinds us. It hides what we're losing. It turns progress into pressure and success into destruction. A tree does not grow forever. At some point, it spreads its branches, deepens its roots, and finds its shape. So should we. Echo chamber mentality is the habit of seeking out only the information, opinions, and voices that confirm what you already believe. It means surrounding yourself with people who think like you and ignoring those who don't. This mindset creates a narrow world where ideas are repeated, never challenged, and where disagreement is seen as a threat. Over time, it builds walls between people, increases misunderstanding, and feeds ignorance and intolerance. This way of thinking often starts with comfort. It feels good to hear things that match your views. It creates a sense of certainty. You feel smart, right, and safe. In contrast, hearing opposing views can feel uncomfortable, confusing, or even offensive. So people begin to avoid it. They follow certain news sources, join specific groups, and talk only to people. Echo chamber mentality is the habit of seeking out only the information, opinions, and voices that confirm what you already believe. It means surrounding yourself with people who think like you and ignoring those who don't. This mindset creates a narrow world where ideas are repeated, never challenged, and where disagreement is seen as a threat. Over time, it builds walls between people, increases misunderstanding, and feeds ignorance and intolerance. This way of thinking often starts with comfort. It feels good to hear things that match your views. It creates a sense of certainty. You feel smart, right, and safe. In contrast, hearing opposing views can feel uncomfortable, confusing, or even offensive. So people begin to avoid it. They follow certain news sources, join specific groups, and talk only to people who agree with them. The result is an echo chamber, a closed space where the same thoughts bounce around, getting louder but not necessarily smarter. Social media has made this problem much worse. Algorithms are designed to keep people online longer, and they do this by showing content that matches past behavior. If you click on a video with a certain viewpoint, the platform shows you more like it. If you follow one political figure, the system will suggest others with similar ideas. This creates a feedback loop. The more you engage, the more the system reinforces your existing beliefs. Over time, your online world starts to look like the only world, and everyone who disagrees seems wrong, stupid, or dangerous. Imagine someone named Omar. He's interested in politics and starts following a few pages online that share his views. At first, the content feels informative and fair, but gradually, the tone becomes more aggressive. The posts start mocking the other side, calling them names, questioning their morals. Omar doesn't question this. He already believed they were wrong. Now he starts to believe they are evil. He stops listening to opposing arguments. He unfollows old friends who disagree. In his feed, his side always looks good and the other always looks bad. He doesn't realize he's in an echo chamber. To him, it just looks like the truth. This mentality can exist across all topics: politics, religion, science, social issues, even health. People form strong beliefs and then look only for facts that support them. If they see new evidence, they reject it. They say it's fake, biased, or part of an agenda. They are not really thinking, they are defending a belief. This is called confirmation bias, and it fuels the echo chamber. It doesn't matter how smart someone is. If they never leave the echo chamber, their thinking becomes rigid and shallow. Schools and workplaces also reflect this problem. In some classrooms, teachers may avoid hard topics because students or parents only want one version of the story. In some offices, teams may avoid raising objections because they fear being labeled as difficult. When everyone agrees too quickly, bad ideas go unchallenged. People stop asking questions. They stop listening. This weakens decision-making and blocks real learning. Newsrooms are affected as well. Some outlets choose stories that please their audience rather than inform them. They focus on headlines that confirm what their readers already think. They avoid complex topics or frame them in one-sided ways. The goal becomes loyalty, not accuracy. Readers stay in their lane. They stop asking what might be missing from the story. They become consumers of opinion, not seekers of understanding. One of the biggest dangers of echo chambers is how they affect how people see others. If you only hear one view of a group, whether it's a religion, a race, a political party, or a profession, you start to believe that view. You stop seeing people as individuals. You assume everyone in that group thinks the same way. You exaggerate their flaws and ignore their strengths. This feeds stereotypes. It grows mistrust. It turns neighbors into strangers. Consider a student named Zara. She grows up hearing that a certain group of people are untrustworthy. Her family, school, and media all repeat the same message. She never meets someone from that group. She never reads their books, hears their stories, or sees their humanity. When she finally does, she feels uneasy, not because of anything real, but because of everything she's been told. Her reaction is shaped by the echo chamber, not by direct experience. The echo chamber also shuts down growth. To learn, you need to be challenged. You need to face new information, rethink ideas, and admit mistakes. But in a closed environment, mistakes are seen as weakness. Questions are discouraged. People play it safe. They repeat the right phrases and stay in the group's good graces. Intellectual courage fades. Curiosity dies. The mind stops stretching. This doesn't mean all views are equally valid. Some ideas are better supported by evidence. Some are more ethical or more useful, but you can't know which ideas are stronger if you never test them. Listening to others isn't about giving every view the same weight. It's about building the habit of asking why, how, and what else. It's about learning how to disagree with respect and think through problems clearly. Breaking out of an echo chamber takes effort. It means reading books you wouldn't normally pick up. It means listening to people you usually ignore. It means asking questions instead of making assumptions. It doesn't mean you have to change your beliefs. But it does mean being open to the possibility that you don't have the full picture. Think of someone named Bilal. He believes strongly in one political party, but instead of rejecting everything from the other side, he decides to follow a few of their thinkers. He reads their articles, not to agree, but to understand. He notices they raise good points sometimes. Dehumanization of opponents is the habit of viewing others not as people, but as enemies, animals, or objects. It means stripping away their humanity, ignoring their thoughts, feelings, fears, and reasons. Once someone is seen this way, empathy fades. There's no need to listen, no space for understanding, and no effort to see the other side. In this state of mind, people stop thinking, "Why do they believe this?" and start thinking, "How do we defeat them?" The result is not just division, it is cruelty. This behavior appears most clearly in political conflicts. When public figures describe opponents as insects, rats, or threats to be removed, they signal that these people are no longer citizens with rights or voices. They are problems to be solved. This language makes violence easier to justify. If someone is not fully human, then what happens to them doesn't seem to matter. Punishment becomes entertainment. Suffering becomes deserved. Consider someone named Rayhan. He is angry about rising prices and a government that seems corrupt. He joins a group that blames everything on another political party. At first, he just disagrees with them. But over time, the group's language becomes more harsh. They say the other side is evil, traitorous, even less than human. They share posts with pictures that mock their opponent's appearance. They call them parasites. Rayhan starts to repeat these words without thinking. He no longer sees these people as neighbors. He sees them as threats. This kind of thinking doesn't come from nowhere. It often grows from fear or pain. When people feel powerless, they look for someone to blame. When they feel threatened, they want clear lines between us and them. Dehumanization offers a shortcut. It simplifies a complex world into two clean sides. It says, "You're right, they're wrong, you're good. They're bad." That story is easier to follow than the truth, which is often messy. History is full of examples. Before genocide, war, or mass violence, the first step is often dehumanization. One group is painted as dirty, dangerous, or backward. Posters, speeches, and media repeat these messages until they feel normal. Once enough people believe it, they stop objecting to abuse. They turn away from suffering or join in. This pattern has played out in many places, across cultures and time, but it also happens in everyday life. On social media, people attack others with words they would never say face to face. They use labels, insults, and stereotypes. They focus on the worst parts of someone's belief and ignore everything else. They share videos that show the opponent as ridiculous or cruel. They laugh at their pain. This may feel like justice, but it is not. It is dehumanization dressed as humor. It can also happen in schools and homes. Children learn from what they hear. If a child hears adults talk about a group of people as lazy, violent, or unworthy, they carry that idea into their lives. They may not know the full history. They may not understand the issue, but they know who is us and who is them, and they act on that knowledge in small and large ways, mocking, excluding, or hating without reason. Dehumanization blocks dialogue. If someone is seen as less than human, there's no need to explain your views to them or listen to theirs. You don't argue with animals. You cage them, silence them, or chase them away. This mindset turns disagreement into battle. It makes compromise seem like surrender. It stops any chance of peace or progress. In this world, the only goal is to win, no matter the cost. Even people who believe in fairness can fall into this trap. They may think, "I'm just being strong," or "they started it." But strength without empathy is not strength, it's control. And when both sides see each other this way, the cycle gets worse. One insult leads to another. One act of violence leads to revenge. Each side feels justified. Each side says they're monsters. Neither side sees the truth. Both are losing. There's also a cost to the person doing the dehumanizing. They become more angry, more suspicious, and more closed. They stop learning. They stop questioning. They surround themselves with people who say the same things and shut out anyone who disagrees. Their world becomes smaller, darker, and more afraid. In trying to defeat the enemy, they lose part of themselves. Think of a woman named Miriam. She works in a clinic and helps people every day. She is kind, thoughtful, and proud of her work. But when she talks about a group she disagrees with politically, her words change. She says they are brainless sheep, puppets, or worse. She doesn't care if they lose their jobs, get hurt, or suffer. She says they deserve it. She doesn't see that she's speaking about human beings, the same kind she helps every day. She doesn't see what this language does to her own sense of care. Dehumanization is not always loud. Sometimes it sounds polite, like calling someone "those people," or talking about a community as a problem to fix. Sometimes it hides behind jokes. Sometimes it's built into rules or systems that treat some lives as less valuable than others. But whether it's subtle or harsh, the effect is the same. It divides and hardens. It tells people that certain voices don't count. It makes cruelty easier to ignore. This thinking is not limited to one country, party, or faith. It can grow anywhere people feel threatened, unheard, or angry. It feeds on emotion, not reason. And once it takes root, it's hard to pull out. That's why it must be challenged early. Not just with arguments, but with questions. Who are we talking about? What are we leaving out? What would it feel like to be in their place? Seeing someone as human doesn't mean agreeing with them. It means accepting that they have a mind, a history, and a heart. They came to their beliefs through their own path, just as you did. They may be wrong, but they are not monsters. They may be angry, but they are not animals. They are people. And as long as we forget that, we forget something essential about ourselves. Over-identification with beliefs is when a person ties their entire identity to an idea, ideology, or label. It means they no longer just believe something, they become that belief. Their views stop being something they hold and start being who they are. When this happens, disagreement feels like a personal attack. A question becomes a threat. Doubt turns into betrayal. The result is a closed mind, a fragile ego, and a deep hostility to anything that doesn't fit the chosen identity. This mindset often starts with good intentions. People find a cause, movement, or philosophy that speaks to them. It gives them purpose and direction. It helps explain the world. At first, it feels freeing, but over time, the belief system becomes more than just a guide. It becomes a shield. The person starts to reject anything that challenges the belief, even if the challenge is honest or thoughtful. They surround themselves with people who think the same way and avoid those who don't. The belief becomes a bubble, and they live inside it. Imagine someone named Hassan. He discovers a political movement that aligns with his values. He reads its books, joins its groups, and follows its leaders. Slowly, he begins to speak in slogans. He sees every issue through the lens of the movement. If someone disagrees, he calls them blind or corrupt. He doesn't just argue for his side, he attacks the other. When new facts arise, he explains them away or claims they're lies. He no longer asks questions. He already knows the answer to everything. To him, the belief isn't just true, it's sacred. This kind of thinking makes growth difficult. When beliefs become identity, people resist change. They avoid conversations that might shake their views. They stop reading or listening outside their circle. They say things like, "That's just who I am," or "People like us don't believe that." These statements end thought. They block reflection. They shut down curiosity. It also harms relationships. A person who over-identifies with their beliefs may push others away. Friends and family who disagree are seen as threats or traitors. A conversation about ideas turns into a fight about respect. The person may say, "If you don't support this, you don't support me." They can't separate themselves from the belief. This makes honest dialogue almost impossible. The only safe response is agreement or silence. In public life, this mindset feeds division. People sort themselves into camps. Each group sees itself as righteous and the others as wrong. Labels like liberal, conservative, feminist, nationalist, atheist, or believer stop being shorthand. They become full definitions of a person. Complex issues are flattened. No one asks why someone thinks a certain way. They just assume motive. They only care about power. They want to destroy the country. They're brainwashed. This kind of thinking doesn't try to understand. It tries to win. Social media rewards this mindset. Posts that express strong loyalty to a belief or identity get more attention. Nuance gets lost. A thoughtful post that says, "This is complicated," won't get shared as much as one that says, "This is war." People start to perform their identity for others. They post, comment, and argue to prove their loyalty. They fear being called fake, soft, or disloyal. So they double down, even when they have doubts. They stay inside the lines, even when the world outside is changing. Over-identification also leads to double standards. A person who ties their identity to a cause may excuse bad behavior on their own side. They say, "He's one of us, so it's okay." They forgive lies, violence, or failure if it comes from their group, but they condemn the same actions in others. This weakens moral clarity. It teaches people to care more about the team than the truth. This can happen in religion, politics, activism, or even academic fields. A person who ties their self-worth to their belief becomes defensive. If you question their ideas, they act like you insulted their character. They say, "You just hate people like me," or "You're attacking who I am." This makes real dialogue impossible. It replaces reason with emotion and questions with accusations. Take the case of Ariba. She studies environmental science and becomes active in climate advocacy. She cares deeply about the planet, but over time, she becomes unable to hear any ideas that don't match her views. When someone questions a policy, she says they hate nature. When someone mentions economic trade-offs, she calls them greedy. Even when the science changes, she doesn't adapt. She sees herself as a defender of truth and anyone who challenges her as the enemy. She started with knowledge, but now she only wants to be right. Over-identification also causes internal pressure. When someone builds their identity around a belief, they have to defend it at all costs. They fear being wrong because it would mean losing a piece of themselves. This makes it hard to admit mistakes or change course. They carry the burden of being right, even when it hurts them. It becomes a constant fight to protect the image they've built. But beliefs are tools. They help us make sense of the world, but they are not the world itself. They should be flexible enough to grow, shift, and improve over time. When they become fixed, they stop serving us. Instead, we serve them. The point of holding a belief should be to understand more, not to defend ourselves from reality. There's a difference between standing for something and becoming it. A doctor who over-identifies with medicine may struggle when they retire. A teacher who sees themselves only through their role may feel lost when they change jobs. A person who builds their entire self around a cause may collapse when that cause fails or changes. Identity must have room to breathe, to move, to grow. Being open to change doesn't mean lacking values. It means trusting yourself enough to adjust. It means holding beliefs like tools, not chains. It means allowing yourself to be wrong, to listen, and to learn. When people let go of over-identification, they gain strength, not weakness. They become more rooted in reality, more honest with themselves, and more able to connect with others. A belief system should help you think, not prevent it. It should open you to the world, not shut it out. It should bring you closer to people, not turn them into enemies. When belief becomes identity, it narrows the self. It builds a wall between person and world. And in that small space, thought cannot grow. Only loyalty does. And loyalty, without reflection, turns sharp. It becomes something that cuts both others and the self. Cancel culture extremism is the practice of punishing someone harshly for something they said or did, often years ago, without offering any path to understanding or redemption. It turns accountability into exile. The person is not just criticized. They are fired, shamed, mocked, or erased. They are seen not as someone who made a mistake, but as someone who is a mistake. This way of thinking does not aim to teach or repair. It aims to destroy. This pattern starts with a real concern. Someone says something offensive, harmful, or ignorant. They are called out, often online. This is a part of healthy society. People should be responsible for their words. But cancel culture extremism goes beyond criticism. It treats every offense as unforgivable. It makes no room for cancel culture extremism is the practice of punishing someone harshly for something they said or did, often years ago, without offering any path to understanding or redemption. It turns accountability into exile. The person is not just criticized. They are fired, shamed, mocked, or erased. They are seen not as someone who made a mistake, but as someone who is a mistake. This way of thinking does not aim to teach or repair. It aims to destroy. This pattern starts with a real concern. Someone says something offensive, harmful, or ignorant. They are called out, often online. This is a part of healthy society. People should be responsible for their words. But cancel culture extremism goes beyond criticism. It treats every offense as unforgivable. It makes no room for apology or growth. It does not ask, did this person learn? It asks only, how fast can we take them down? Imagine someone named Faiza. 10 years ago, as a teenager, she posted something online that was insensitive. At the time, she didn't fully understand its impact. Years later, she's working at a nonprofit, helping people in need. Someone finds the post, shares it widely, and demands she be fired. The post spreads. People call her names. Strangers flood her inbox with threats. Her employer, afraid of the backlash, lets her go. No one asks what kind of person she is now. No one checks if she apologized or grew. In their eyes, her mistake is who she is, forever. This mindset turns justice into performance. People call out others not to improve the culture, but to gain status. The harsher the attack, the more applause they get. Social media rewards outrage. It moves fast and forgets context. A clipped video or a single sentence can go viral. People join in without knowing the full story. They pile on because it feels good to be on the right side. But this fast judgment can leave lasting harm. Cancel culture extremism also confuses harm with intent. Not every mistake comes from hate. Sometimes, people are careless, uninformed, or speaking from a different background. They may say something awkward without knowing it's hurtful. The better response is to engage, to say, here's why this is a problem. But cancel culture extremism skips that step. It assumes the worst and reacts with force. This creates fear. People stop asking honest questions. They stay silent. Afraid of saying the wrong thing, they repeat safe phrases instead of speaking freely. They don't explore difficult topics. In schools, students avoid debate. In workplaces, staff avoid feedback. People walk on eggshells, not because they respect each other, but because they fear each other. This weakens trust and honesty. It also divides communities. Instead of building bridges, cancel culture builds walls. It says, you're either pure or you're done. It treats people as either good or evil, with no middle ground. But real life is more complicated. People change. They carry both good and bad. Growth takes time. Cancel culture extremism doesn't allow for that. It freezes a person in their worst moment and says, this is all you are. Even when people apologize, it's often not enough. Critics say the apology is fake, too late, or not worded right. The goalposts keep moving. The person is told they must do more, confess more, suffer more. Even those who show genuine change are never fully welcomed back. This sends the message that redemption is not possible, that once you fail, you're finished. But accountability without redemption is cruelty. It doesn't lead to healing. It leads to fear, silence, and resentment. People who might have grown instead become defensive. They shut down. They see the culture not as just, but as punishing. And those watching from the outside learn the same lesson. Don't admit mistakes, don't take risks, and never show weakness. Think of someone like Jamal. He once held views that were narrow and outdated. But over the years, through reading, listening, and talking to others, he changed. He now works to support the very people he once misunderstood. But someone finds an old speech of his and shares it. They don't include the context. They don't show his change. They just say, look what he said, cancel him. All his work, growth, and reflection are ignored. His past mistake erases his present self. This is not accountability, it is erasure. Cancel culture extremism also creates a false sense of moral purity. It tells people that if they say the right things, they are good. It rewards the performance of virtue, not the hard work of being better. Someone who says the perfect thing online may be cruel in private. Someone who makes a mistake in public may be kind in real life. But cancel culture doesn't check. It sees only the post, the clip, the headline. It also undermines real justice. When everything is treated as equally offensive, nothing stands out. A minor mistake is punished the same way as deep harm. This cheapens the idea of accountability. It also distracts from bigger issues. When a misused word gets more attention than policy failure or systemic abuse, the culture loses focus. Outrage becomes noise. There's also a risk of hypocrisy. Some who cancel others refuse to reflect on their own past. They attack with righteous anger, then hide their own mistakes. The pressure to be flawless leads to dishonesty. People fake beliefs, hide questions, and edit their past to stay safe. But no one is perfect. Everyone has something to learn, unlearn, or admit. True accountability requires space. It means naming harm, yes, but also inviting reflection, apology, and change. It means judging people not just by what they said or did, but by what they did next. Did they listen? Did they grow? Did they try to make things? Perfectionism as morality is the belief that being a good person means being flawless. It treats mistakes not as part of learning, but as proof of weakness or failure. It sets impossible standards and tells people they must meet them to be worthy of respect, success, or love. This mindset doesn't just affect how people see their work, it affects how they see themselves. It creates fear, shame, and a deep sense of never being enough. This way of thinking starts early. Children hear praise when they get everything right and criticism when they fall short. Over time, they begin to believe that their value depends on their performance. They learn that errors are not just problems to fix, they are moral stains. A child who struggles in math may start to think, not just I'm bad at math, but I'm stupid. A teenager who says something wrong in perfectionism as morality is the belief that being a good person means being flawless. It treats mistakes not as part of learning, but as proof of weakness or failure. It sets impossible standards and tells people they must meet them to be worthy of respect, success, or love. This mindset doesn't just affect how people see their work, it affects how they see themselves. It creates fear, shame, and a deep sense of never being enough. This way of thinking starts early. Children hear praise when they get everything right and criticism when they fall short. Over time, they begin to believe that their value depends on their performance. They learn that errors are not just problems to fix, they are moral stains. A child who struggles in math may start to think, not just I'm bad at math, but I'm stupid. A teenager who says something wrong in class may feel not just embarrassed, but ashamed. Perfection becomes the price of being acceptable. In schools, this belief shows up in how success is measured. Grades and test scores are often seen as the final word on ability. A student who does everything well is rewarded and praised. A student who slips, even once, may be labeled as careless or lazy. Feedback becomes focused on flaws rather than progress. Learning becomes a competition, not a process. Students stop taking risks because failure feels like moral failure. In workplaces, perfectionism can show up in high-pressure environments where mistakes are not tolerated. An employee who makes a small error may be treated harshly or publicly shamed. Even if they are normally strong performers, one slip can define how others see them. This creates a culture of fear. People hide problems instead of addressing them. They avoid creative ideas because creativity involves risk. Innovation slows down because no one wants to be the first to fail. Imagine someone named Lena. She works in a law firm known for its high standards. She stays late, checks her emails constantly, and avoids asking for help. One day, she misses a deadline by a few hours. Her manager scolds her in front of others. She apologizes, but the damage is done. Her confidence drops. She starts second-guessing every decision. She takes longer on every task and sleeps less. What was once a small mistake now feels like a moral scar. She starts to believe she is no longer trusted or competent. The fear of not being perfect has paralyzed her. Perfectionism as morality also shows up in social and political spaces. People may expect each other to always say the right thing, hold the right views, and never offend. If someone makes a mistake, they are not corrected, they are condemned. They are seen as flawed and therefore bad. This creates a culture where people don't speak honestly. They stick to safe topics. They perform agreement rather than risk disagreement. They fear being labeled ignorant, insensitive, or wrong. The pressure to be perfect also shapes personal relationships. A person who sees imperfection as failure may try to control their behavior and emotions to appear flawless. They avoid showing weakness. They fear vulnerability. If they make a mistake with a friend or partner, they may withdraw rather than apologize. They may become defensive or silent. They feel that being wrong makes them unlovable. Over time, their relationships suffer not because they are flawed, but because they won't allow themselves to be. This mindset turns self-improvement into self-punishment. A person who wants to be better may set impossible goals. When they fall short, they feel shame, not growth. They treat setbacks as proof that they are broken. They compare themselves to an ideal that doesn't exist. They never feel good enough. No matter what they achieve, even success brings stress because now they must protect it. They cannot rest. They cannot relax. They live in constant fear of slipping. Think of someone like Adil. He grew up in a family where mistakes were not accepted. Now, as an adult, he works hard to be the best father, husband, and employee he can be. But when he forgets a school event or loses his temper, he falls into despair. He tells himself he has failed. He doesn't speak to anyone about it. He avoids looking in the mirror. His standard is so high that being human feels like a weakness. He has made perfection a condition of being a good person, and that belief is slowly wearing him down. Perfectionism also creates double standards. A person may expect flawlessness in others, but hide their own struggles. They judge others harshly for the same things they fear in themselves. This weakens trust and connection. It creates a world where everyone pretends and no one feels safe. When people are punished for being imperfect, they stop showing their real selves. This belief can even affect how people approach justice or morality. A person who wants to be ethical may think they must always act with total awareness and never cause harm. But life is complex. Even well-meaning choices can have bad outcomes. Even kind people make mistakes. When morality is tied to perfection, people either pretend to be flawless or give up entirely. They feel trapped between guilt and silence. A healthy sense of morality leaves space for failure. It expects growth, not flawlessness. It treats mistakes as steps, not final judgments. It allows people to say, "I got that wrong," without losing their worth. Toxic positivity is the practice of forcing cheerfulness and optimism at all times, even when someone is in pain. It demands a constant attitude of good vibes only and treats sadness, anger, or fear as signs of weakness or failure. This way of thinking doesn't help people feel better. It pressures them to hide how they really feel. It turns struggle into shame. Instead of support, it offers slogans. Instead of comfort, it gives denial. This mindset often shows up in well-meaning ways. A friend hears someone is having a hard time and replies, "Just stay positive." A coworker talks about burnout and someone says, "At least you have a job." A person shares news of illness and someone replies, "Everything happens for a reason." These responses sound kind on the surface, but they carry a message. Stop feeling bad. They push discomfort away instead of allowing it to be seen, heard, and understood. Imagine someone named Harris. He recently lost a parent and is struggling with grief. He tries to talk to his friends about the pain, but they keep saying things like, "Your mom wouldn't want you to be sad," or "She's in a better place." These words are meant to help, but they shut him down. He starts to feel that his grief is a problem for others. He stops opening up. He cries in private and smiles in public. Over time, his pain turns inward. He feels alone, not just in his loss, but in his need to pretend he's fine. Toxic positivity doesn't allow space for complexity. It wants clean stories with happy endings. It tells people that if they think positively, they can fix anything. If they still feel bad, it must be because they're not trying hard enough. This idea puts all the pressure on the individual. It ignores the fact that life is hard, that suffering is real, and that some problems don't have simple solutions. It replaces care with control. In workplaces, this mindset shows up in messages like, "We're a family," or "There's no room for negativity here." Employees are expected to stay upbeat no matter how much pressure they're under. If someone raises a concern, they may be labeled as negative or difficult. If they express frustration, they're told to be more grateful. This kind of environment creates silence. People don't speak up about unfair treatment, burnout, or mistakes. Problems grow because no one feels safe naming them. In schools, students are often told to look on the bright side, instead of being taught how to manage hard emotions. They may be praised only when they're cheerful and polite. If they cry, show anger, or express confusion, they may be told to calm down or try harder. This teaches children to suppress their feelings rather than understand them. They learn that being good means being quiet and smiling, even when they're hurting inside. Social media adds another layer. People post quotes about happiness, gratitude, and strength. They share pictures of perfect days and filtered joy. Those watching may start to believe that everyone else is doing fine. They compare their real lives, messy, painful, complicated, to a stream of highlight reels. They feel behind, they feel broken, and they may start to think that showing pain is a failure. So they smile through the pain, post cheerful updates, and stay silent about what's really happening. Toxic positivity also damages mental health. Someone who lives with depression or anxiety may be told to just think happy thoughts or focus on the good. These messages ignore the real nature of mental illness. They turn it into a mindset problem instead of a medical one. The person may begin to feel guilty for struggling. They may think their condition is a moral flaw. Instead of seeking help, they may try to fake their way through it. This delays healing and deepens isolation. Think of a woman named Sana. She's facing financial stress, relationship tension, and exhaustion from caregiving. She finally tells a friend, hoping for support. But the friend says, "Everything will work out. You're strong. Don't worry." The words offer no space for pain. Sana nods and changes the subject. Inside, she feels dismissed. She begins to doubt herself. She wonders if she's weak for feeling overwhelmed. Her pain becomes harder to name, and her friend becomes harder to trust. Toxic positivity also affects how people relate to themselves. They judge their feelings instead of exploring them. If they feel sad, they tell themselves they're being dramatic. If they feel scared, they try to push it away. If they make a mistake, they try to cover it with a smile. This creates a divide inside. They no longer know what they truly feel. They become actors in their own lives, performing joy when what they need is rest, care, or honesty. Some people confuse positivity with strength, but true strength includes the ability to face pain, to sit with discomfort, and to admit when things are not okay. Real optimism doesn't ignore reality. It sees the struggle and believes that healing is still possible. It offers support without denial. It says, "This is hard, and you're not alone." It doesn't push someone to be cheerful. It walks with them until the light returns. Toxic positivity creates loneliness. When everyone around you is smiling and saying, "Just be happy," you begin to feel like the only one who's struggling. You feel broken for having normal human emotions. You stop reaching out. You isolate yourself. You carry your pain alone, and the silence makes it heavier. Allowing people to be real is not negativity. It's honesty. It's care. When someone says they're hurting, the best response is not to fix them. It's to sit beside them, to say, "I hear you," to ask, "Do you want to talk about it?" To offer time, space, and trust. Sometimes people don't need solutions. They need room to feel. Not every day is a good day. Not every season is bright. Life brings loss, anger, fear, and grief. These are not signs of failure. They are part of being alive. When we stop pretending that joy is the only emotion worth sharing, we make space for something more important, truth. And truth, even when it hurts, is what makes healing possible. Consumerism as identity is the idea that what you buy is who you are. It turns clothes, gadgets, cars, and brands into symbols of self-worth. It tells people they must keep up with trends to stay relevant. This mindset is not just about owning things. It's about building a self-image through what you wear, use, and display. A person's value becomes linked to their ability to buy and show the right things at the right time. This thinking shapes how people see themselves from a young age. Teenagers may feel pressure to own a certain phone, wear a specific brand of shoes, or use the latest app. If they don't, they risk being seen as behind or out of touch. The message is clear. To belong, you must consume the right way. People are judged not by their actions or ideas, but by their possessions. Appearances matter more than substance. Social media makes this worse. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok encourage people to show their lives as polished, curated displays. Every photo, video, or post becomes a chance to show off a lifestyle. Vacations, outfits, morning routines, everything becomes content. The brands in the background, the quality of the image, even the editing style all signal status. People watching begin to measure their lives against what they see. They ask not "Who am I?" but "What do I look like to others?" Imagine someone named Adil. He scrolls through his feed and sees people wearing luxury clothes, driving expensive cars, and eating at trendy restaurants. He starts to feel like he's missing out. Even though he's paying his bills, caring for his family, and working hard, he feels behind. So he starts buying things he can't afford: new shoes, watches, designer clothes, not because he needs them, but because he wants to be seen a certain way. He's building an identity through shopping, hoping it will give him the feeling of worth that his everyday life doesn't provide. This way of thinking also shapes how companies market themselves. Brands are no longer just products, they are lifestyles. A shoe company doesn't just sell shoes. It sells a sense of being bold, athletic, or stylish. A phone isn't just a tool. It's a statement about taste, intelligence, or status. When you buy something, you're told you're not just getting an item, you're joining a tribe. You're making a claim about who you are. Over time, this erases the line between need and want. A person might need shoes, but now they want the right shoes. They need a phone, but they want the latest one. If they don't get it, they feel like they're falling behind. This creates constant pressure to upgrade, update, and replace. The goalpost keeps moving, no matter what you have. There is always something newer or better. This cycle also creates stress and debt. People may spend money they don't have to maintain a certain image. They use credit to keep up with others. They hide their financial struggles to protect their status. They become trapped in a loop of earning, spending, and comparing. Even when they get the thing they want, the feeling fades quickly. The next product or trend soon takes its place. Consumerism as identity also affects how people view others. A person wearing luxury labels may be seen as more successful or admirable. Someone with older clothes or no visible brands might be dismissed as unimportant. This leads to shallow judgments. People stop asking what someone believes or values. They only ask what they own. Relationships can become more about appearance than connection. Take someone like Hina. She works at a marketing firm and feels constant pressure to dress a certain way. She updates her wardrobe every season and tracks every trend. Her coworkers notice and praise her style. She gains a reputation for being put together, but over time, she feels exhausted. She no longer shops because she enjoys it. She shops because it's expected. Her self-worth is tied to her image. If she shows up in something outdated, she fears losing respect. The performance never ends. Consumerism as identity also reduces space for individuality. When everyone follows trends, personal expression shrinks. People start to dress the same, decorate the same, and post the same. They don't ask what reflects their values. They ask what will get likes. The pressure to fit in replaces the freedom to explore. Choices become about signaling, not about truth. This mindset also disconnects people from deeper forms of identity. Culture, values, purpose, and creativity take a backseat to branding. A person may know what products they like, but not what they stand for. They may know what styles they prefer, but not what kind of life they want. Consumerism fills the space where reflection might happen. It keeps people busy with chasing rather than asking. Even well-meaning movements can fall into this trap. A person might buy eco-friendly products, not because they care about the planet, but because it fits their image. They might support causes for the sake of visibility, not commitment. Identity becomes another product to manage, polish, and display. Over time, this way of living leaves people feeling hollow. They have the right clothes, the right devices, the right home, but something is missing. The feeling of being known, grounded, or at peace doesn't come from owning things. It comes from knowing who you are beyond them. Consumerism offers quick hits of self-esteem, but it doesn't offer depth. It promises satisfaction, then pushes you toward the next purchase. A culture built on consumer identity loses sight of people. It treats individuals as markets. It treats values as trends. It treats self-worth as a function of buying power. The person is no longer seen as a being with complexity, but as a user, a follower, a shopper. Their meaning is measured in logos, not actions. Real identity grows from purpose, experience, and values. It takes time to form. It can't be bought or branded. It changes and deepens through struggle, reflection, and connection. When people let go of the need to perform identity through consumption, they begin to make choices that reflect who they are, not who they want to appear to be. This opens space for freedom, honesty, and peace. It allows people to move from chasing to choosing, from comparing to belonging. And in that space, identity becomes real again. Digital disembodiment is the experience of losing connection with the real world through constant use of screens. It happens when people spend so much time online that they forget the feeling of being present in their bodies, in nature, or with others. Over time, they become less aware of how they move, breathe, or feel. They become more concerned with what's happening on a screen than what's happening around them. Their lives shift from lived experiences to digital ones. And that shift comes with quiet, lasting costs. This disconnection often builds slowly. A person checks their phone while walking, then they scroll through social media during meals. They start watching videos late into the night. Eventually, screen time fills almost every free moment. The physical world becomes background noise. They eat, walk, and even talk while their mind stays in a digital space. What begins as convenience becomes routine. The body is still there, but the mind is somewhere else. Imagine someone named Bilal. He works at a computer all day. In breaks, he checks his phone. After work, he watches shows, plays games, or scrolls through news feeds. He spends more than 12 hours each day in front of screens. He rarely goes outside unless necessary. He eats at his desk, forgets to stretch, and doesn't notice how tired his eyes feel until they burn. He doesn't feel sick, but he also doesn't feel fully alive. The line between himself and his devices has faded. Digital disembodiment shows up in small ways. People forget to drink water or take deep breaths. They slump in chairs for hours. They move less and sit more. They eat out of habit, not hunger. Their sleep becomes shallow and broken because blue light keeps the brain alert. Even when the body sends signals, tight shoulders, dry eyes, fatigue, they ignore them. The screen holds their attention too tightly. It also changes how people relate to others. Face-to-face connection takes effort. It needs time, space, and emotional presence. Online interaction feels faster and easier. A message takes a second. A like takes a tap. But these small exchanges lack depth. A friend may be struggling, but their profile shows smiling pictures. A long conversation is replaced by emojis or quick replies. Over time, people forget how to sit with silence, hold eye contact, or listen fully. They begin to feel closer to their digital avatars than their real selves. In families, digital disembodiment can create distance. Parents and children sit in the same room, but each looks at a different screen. Meals are rushed or eaten apart. Conversations are interrupted by notifications. Even moments of rest, before sleep or after school, are filled with scrolling. The house feels busy, but also lonely. Everyone is there, but no one is fully present. Nature becomes another forgotten space. People spend less time outdoors. They forget the feel of sun on skin or wind in their hair. They stop noticing the shape of leaves or the sounds of birds. Screens offer constant stimulation. Nature is slower and quieter. But that slowness heals the body and calms the mind. Without it, stress builds. The nervous system stays in alert mode. Rest becomes harder to reach. Digital disembodiment also affects how people understand themselves. Online identity becomes curated. People choose what to show and what to hide. They post pictures that flatter, words that impress, and updates that entertain. They begin to see themselves through a lens of performance. Every move is measured by feedback, likes, shares, comments. The body becomes a brand. Natural flaws are edited out. Normal emotions are filtered. The self becomes a product, and living turns into content creation. Think of a teenager named Zoya. She feels pressure to post daily, to look perfect, to be interesting. She edits her photos, plans her captions, and tracks her engagement. She knows how to pose and smile, but she no longer knows how to feel at ease. In real life, she feels awkward and unsure. Her body feels like a costume. When she looks in the mirror, she compares herself to the version she posts. The distance between who she is and who she performs grows wider each day. The body begins to fade from awareness. People forget how to sit with stillness, how to feel grounded, how to notice tension and let it go. Movement becomes limited to finger taps. Breathing becomes shallow. The senses go unused. People stop feeling hunger or fullness. They don't notice when they're tired until they crash. This separation from the body makes it harder to care for it. Pain is ignored. Rest is delayed. Illness is seen as an interruption instead of a signal. The online world also shifts time. Everything moves fast. News updates, videos, replies, all flow without pause. This pace becomes normal. Real life feels slow in comparison. Cooking a meal, going for a walk, or reading a book begins to feel like a chore. Patience fades, attention shortens. The brain gets used to stimulation and struggles with calm. People chase more content, not because they enjoy it, but because silence feels strange. Digital disembodiment can feel invisible. A person may not realize they're disconnected. They're busy, entertained, and informed. But beneath the surface, something is missing. They feel vague restlessness, a sense of fatigue that sleep doesn't fix, a lack of joy in things they once loved, a constant buzz of anxiety. These feelings point to a deeper loss, the loss of presence. The body is not just a machine that carries the mind. It's the place where life is felt. Joy lives in laughter. Grief lives in tears. Trust lives in touch. When people disconnect from the body, they disconnect from these truths. They lose access to full feeling, full presence, and full connection. This disconnection also makes people easier to manipulate. When a person is out of touch with themselves, they're more likely to follow trends, buy what's promoted, or believe what's repeated. They seek meaning through screens rather than through reflection or real connection. Their attention is shaped by algorithms. Their desires are shaped by ads. They become users, not just of devices, but of prepackaged thoughts. Digital tools are not bad. They can inform, connect, and create. But when they replace presence, they take more than they give. The answer is not to reject technology, but to return to the body, to move with purpose, to feel without filters, to sit without scrolling, to remember that being alive happens here, in the breath, in the step, in the face across the table. Without that, we live on screens, but fade from ourselves. Moral relativism is the belief that no one value system is better than another. It says that right and wrong depend entirely on culture, time, or personal opinion. What may be wrong in one society may be fine in another. What one person calls justice, another might call oppression. At first, this idea sounds open-minded. It claims to respect diversity. But taken to an extreme, it leads to confusion and paralysis. If every belief is equally valid, then nothing can truly be wrong and nothing truly right. This mindset often grows out of good intentions. People want to avoid arrogance. They don't want to force their values on others. They see the damage done by those who claimed moral superiority: wars, colonization, prejudice. So they say, everyone has their truth. Who am I to judge? But when this thinking goes too far, it begins to deny the very possibility of shared truths. It suggests that all actions are equally justified if someone somewhere believes they are. Imagine a university classroom discussing child marriage. One student says it's clearly wrong. It takes away a child's freedom and causes long-term harm. Another replies, but in some cultures, it's normal. We shouldn't judge. The conversation stalls. The first student now wonders if speaking up is a kind of moral imperialism. The second student feels righteous for defending cultural variation. But neither explores the deeper issue. Does harm matter? Is there a line between respecting culture and protecting people? When moral relativism becomes the rule, people avoid taking a stand. They fear being seen as intolerant or close-minded. They replace judgment with neutrality. They watch cruelty or corruption and say, it's complicated. They see abuse and say, it's not my place to interfere. In doing so, they confuse understanding with acceptance. But seeing a situation clearly is not the same as approving it. You can understand why something happens and still believe it's wrong. This avoidance creates moral paralysis. A person sees injustice but doesn't act. A leader faces a tough call and chooses silence. A friend hears someone say something harmful and shrugs it off. The thinking goes, everyone has their values. Who am I to say otherwise? But without some sense of what is right and what is wrong, action becomes impossible. If all views are equal, then even the worst ones can claim protection. In daily life, this shows up when people say things like, "That's your truth," or "What's right for you isn't right for me." These statements feel polite. They make room for difference, but they also stop conversation. If everyone's view is untouchable, then there's nothing to discuss, question, or learn from. Growth requires challenge. Dialogue requires friction. When disagreement is seen as judgment, we lose the ability to test our own beliefs and sharpen them. Moral relativism also weakens the idea of human rights. If no value system is better than another, then rights become optional. A society that punishes people for speaking out can say, "This is just our way." A regime that treats some groups as less human can say, "This is part of our history." Without a shared foundation, like the idea that all people deserve dignity, rights become arguments, not principles. Think of a company that pollutes a river in a country with weak laws. Critics speak out, but the company replies, "In this part of the world, this is standard practice." Who are you to impose foreign values? If moral relativism is accepted, that response ends the discussion. The harm doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is local custom. This leaves the victims with no ground to stand on and no way to demand justice. Even in small situations, this mindset causes trouble. Imagine a friend makes a joke that insults someone else's background. When called out, he says, "That's just how I was raised." If that explanation ends the conversation, the insult stands. The person harmed is told, "Your pain matters less than their culture." The desire to avoid judgment becomes a form of permission. Some people confuse moral relativism with humility. They think that admitting uncertainty means denying all certainty. But humility and relativism are not the same. Humility means knowing you might be wrong. It means listening, learning, and being open to change. Relativism says no one can ever be right or wrong. It removes the need to even try. Moral clarity does not mean blind certainty. It means being willing to name harm, even when it's uncomfortable. It means believing that some things, like honesty, fairness, or protection from violence, matter across cultures. It doesn't mean every issue is simple. Many values are shaped by history and place. But some lines are worth drawing, even if they're hard to enforce. Without shared principles, communities lose cohesion. People retreat into private codes. There's no sense of a common good. Debate becomes impossible. Agreement becomes rare. Trust fades. Everyone defends their ground, and and no one builds anything together. Society becomes a patchwork of private truths with no public meaning. Take the example of workplace ethics. If every employee defines fairness in their own way, then workplace rules lose force. One person sees favoritism as normal, another sees it as corruption. One manager gives honest feedback, another avoids it to protect feelings. If no shared values guide behavior, confusion and resentment grow. The workplace becomes chaotic, not inclusive. Moral relativism can even trap the people it tries to protect. Someone who grows up in a system that limits their freedom may want change. But if outsiders say, "That's just your culture," they close the door. They leave the person stuck. The call for justice is dismissed as disrespect. The desire for change is labeled betrayal. In this way, relativism can protect power and silence protest. Not all values are equal in their impact. Some lead to more life, more safety, more dignity. Others lead to harm. To see this, people must be willing to judge, not to condemn, but to understand. They must ask, what are the consequences of this belief? Who benefits? Who suffers? These are not easy questions, but they are necessary. Holding firm values doesn't mean ignoring context. It means balancing respect for others with responsibility to truth. It means seeing that people can be shaped by culture and still be harmed by it. It means trusting that justice is not a fixed formula, but it is not a fantasy either. A world where nothing is better, worse, right, or wrong sounds fair. But in practice, it leaves people stranded. They cannot speak up. They cannot push back. They cannot change what hurts them or others. Moral relativism asks us to stop judging. But judgment is not the enemy. Thoughtless judgment is. Prejudice is. But thoughtful, honest moral reflection is how people grow. It's how societies improve. Without it, all that's left is silence. And silence, in the face of real harm, is not respect. It's surrender. Cynicism as wisdom is the belief that seeing the worst in people, systems, or the future shows maturity. It treats doubt, mockery, and detachment as signs of intelligence. People who hold this view think optimism is naive and that hope is a weakness. They pride themselves on expecting failure. They believe they are being honest, but often they are just guarding themselves from disappointment. Over time, this posture shuts down curiosity, empathy, and courage. This mindset often grows from experience. Someone sees corruption in politics, betrayal in friendships, or failure in movements. They start to believe that nothing ever changes. No one can be trusted, and everyone is out for themselves. They stop expecting improvement. They stop investing effort. Instead of asking how things could get better, they explain why things will never work. They dismiss action before it begins. Imagine someone named Saeed. He used to be involved in community work. He believed people could make a difference. But after years of watching projects fail and promises break, he gave up. Now, when someone suggests a new idea, cleaning the park, helping the poor, starting a local library, he laughs and says, "It won't matter. No one cares." Others admire his sharp comments. He sounds like he knows the truth, but behind his words is grief. He once cared, now he won't let himself. Cynicism hides pain. It's easier to mock than to admit you are hurt. It's safer to act like nothing matters than to hope and be let down. People turn cold, not because they know more, but because they once felt more. They use sarcasm like armor. They don't want to look foolish. They've been burned by their own belief in better. This way of thinking spreads fast. In schools, kids who act detached seem cool. In offices, workers who avoid enthusiasm seem smart. In politics, the loudest critics are called realists. People fear looking naive. They avoid showing passion. They pretend not to care so they won't look weak. They trade hope for a kind of safety, but it's a safety that isolates. Social media rewards this attitude. A hopeful post may get ignored, a bitter joke gets shared. A person who mocks everything gains followers. Criticism sounds bold, negativity feels powerful, but it often says more about the speaker's fear than the world's truth. It signals retreat, not strength. Cynicism often confuses awareness with wisdom. Seeing problems clearly is not the same as giving up. Being informed doesn't require being bitter. A person can understand how broken something is and still try to fix it. Wisdom is not found in declaring it's all fake. It's found in knowing the flaws and still choosing to act. Cynicism stops short. It points out the rot, but refuses to plant anything new. This mindset also discourages others. If every idea is met with "that won't work," people stop speaking. If every effort is mocked, people stop trying. A young teacher shares a new way to engage students, and an older one says, "We tried that years ago, it's pointless." A citizen speaks up at a town hall and gets told, "This system is too corrupt." Over time, the voices of hope grow quiet. Cynicism becomes the loudest voice in the room. It also misjudges the past. Cynics act like failure is the full story, but history includes change, struggle, and breakthroughs. Women got the vote. Apartheid ended. Diseases were cured. None of it happened because people were sarcastic. It happened because someone hoped, acted, and endured. Every movement that changed something began with people who refused to believe nothing mattered. Think of someone like Anya. She believes climate change is real and urgent. She knows the science, the data, the delays. Still, she plants trees, writes articles, and organizes events. Her cousin mocks her, saying, "It's too late. This world's already doomed." But Anya keeps going, not because she's blind to the danger, but because she sees it clearly. Her hope is not ignorance. It's a choice to care despite the odds. Cynicism is often used to dodge responsibility. If nothing matters, then there's no need to try. If everything's broken, why fix anything? This view lets people avoid hard work, hard questions, and uncomfortable truths. They shrug instead of engage. They complain instead of change. And yet they still claim moral high ground. They act as if their inaction is smarter than someone else's effort. This posture is not wisdom. Wisdom listens before it speaks. Wisdom asks what might work, not just what won't. Wisdom knows the cost of hope, but sees that the cost of giving up is higher. A cynical person may look sharp, but they often leave no legacy, just echo. Cynicism also poisons relationships. It tells people not to trust, not to open up, not to believe in one another. It makes connection look foolish. It sees every kind act as fake, every expression of love as a trick. Over time, this breaks down the ability to relate honestly. People stop sharing dreams. They stop building trust. They isolate themselves and call it independence. But it's not freedom, it's fear. Even in personal life, cynicism can stunt growth. A person wants to try therapy, but tells themselves it won't help. They think about reconnecting with family, but assume the worst. They have a dream, but don't start because they expect to fail. They live behind a wall of low expectations. That wall protects them from disappointment, but also from joy. Hope takes more courage than cynicism. It asks people to try again after they've failed. It asks them to trust after being hurt. It asks them to imagine something better when all signs say no. It doesn't deny pain. It moves through it. Cynicism stays in place. It sits in the ashes and says, "I told you so." Being hopeful doesn't mean being naive. It doesn't mean ignoring problems or sugarcoating reality. It means facing those problems with the belief that action still matters, that people can still change, that even when the outcome is unsure, the effort is still worth it. A wise person can feel despair and still act. They can see failure and still care. They can hold both grief and belief at the same time. Cynicism can't do that. It drops belief to escape grief. It chooses numbness over risk. People who believe in something don't need to shout. They keep showing up. They keep building. Their hands may be tired, their hearts may be heavy, but they don't stop. They don't mock those who try. They support them. Cynicism sounds smart, but it doesn't build anything. It tears down. It laughs. It waits for proof before it believes. But change doesn't wait for certainty. It begins when someone decides that action matters, even when they're unsure. Hope doesn't ask for guarantees. It just asks for effort. That effort is where wisdom lives, not in quitting, but in continuing. Not in knowing everything will go wrong, but in working anyway. Authoritarian longing is the desire for a powerful leader who can take control, restore order, and solve problems with force. People who feel this longing often believe that democracy is too slow, messy, or weak. They grow tired of debate, division, and uncertainty. They want someone who will get things done, even if it means giving up certain rights. This mindset can take root during times of fear, instability, or deep frustration. But while the appeal feels simple and strong, the cost is high. This longing often grows in moments of chaos. When people feel that society is falling apart because of crime, corruption, economic hardship, or political gridlock, they may lose trust in democratic systems. Voting feels useless. Dialogue feels fake. Protests feel chaotic. In that vacuum of faith, the figure of a strong man becomes attractive. A person who speaks clearly, acts fast, and promises certainty starts to feel like a solution. Even if they threaten freedoms, people may still cheer because fear has made freedom feel less urgent than control. Imagine a country where jobs are disappearing, prices are rising, and protests fill the streets. People feel left behind. They're angry at leaders who argue but don't act. Into this mood steps a man who says, "Enough talk. I will fix this. Trust me alone." He mocks opponents. He dismisses critics. He says the media lies and only he tells the truth. He speaks with force and claims he will bring back glory. Some people start to see him not just as a candidate, but as a savior. This is not a fantasy. It's a pattern seen in many places across time. In Germany during the 1930s, people who had lost savings and dignity in the Great Depression rallied around a leader who promised national strength and renewal. In Chile during the 1970s, fears of civil unrest helped justify a military coup. In modern-day states, even elected leaders sometimes use emergency powers to silence opponents, rewrite rules, or extend their time in office. Each time, the story is the same. Democracy is too weak. We need someone strong. Authoritarian longing comes with deep emotional appeal. It offers relief from uncertainty. When things feel out of control, a single voice promising stability feels calming. It offers simplicity. Democracy is complex, full of compromise and slow progress. A strongman promises direct answers. It also offers identity. People who feel lost or ignored get to belong again by joining a movement behind a dominant figure. But beneath the surface, this longing turns citizens into followers and leaders into rulers. It rewrites the idea of power. In democracy, leaders serve the people. In authoritarianism, people serve the leader. Rights become conditional. Courts become tools. The press becomes the enemy. Opponents become threats. And ordinary people begin to adjust to these changes in small steps, accepting limits on speech, oversight, and fairness, because the strongman says it's necessary. Think of someone named Kamran. He owns a small shop and feels crushed by rising prices and new taxes. He watches news that blames government inaction and praises a rising political figure who speaks with anger and force. Kamran doesn't follow politics closely, but he likes how this man talks. He says things Kamran feels. He promises to punish corrupt leaders, clean the streets, and make the country proud again. Kamran starts to hope. He votes for him. When critics raise concerns about media bans or jailed activists, Kamran shrugs. It's necessary, he says. We need order. What started as a vote becomes a trade, rights for control. This trade may feel worth it at first. The strongman often delivers early wins, crackdowns, reforms, or new projects. But over time, the price rises. Elections get less free. Laws change to favor those in power. Dissent becomes dangerous. Institutions that once protected people, like courts or independent media, become tools for the regime. And when the leader fails or falters, there is no one left to stop the damage. The very thing people wanted, stability, becomes fragile because it depends on one person's grip. Authoritarian longing also plays on division. A strongman often needs enemies. He may blame outsiders, minorities, or political opponents for the country's problems. He says, "They are the reason you suffer." This creates a sense of unity among supporters, but it builds that unity on fear and anger. It turns neighbors into strangers. It makes dialogue look like weakness. It encourages people to cheer not just for their leader's success, but for others' silence. This approach erodes civic life. People stop organizing. They stop speaking. They start waiting for orders, not answers. Fear replaces responsibility. Loyalty replaces participation. The very skills democracy needs, listening, compromising, questioning, begin to wither. And once those habits are lost, they're hard to rebuild. Even those who support the strongman may lose out. When rights are taken away from one group, they don't stop there. When laws bend for the powerful, they bend for all. When truth becomes whatever the leader says, no one can trust anything. Control that feels safe today can become suffocating tomorrow. The crowd that cheered yesterday may find itself silenced next. Authoritarian longing is not always loud. It can be quiet, a slow turning away from democracy out of boredom, fatigue, or distrust. It grows in the silence left by broken systems. It grows when people stop believing that their voice matters. But democracy does not die only in coups. It dies in indifference, in the shrug, in the whisper that says, maybe we need someone strong. The answer to this longing is not shame, but courage. People must name their fears, but not hand them over. They must admit where systems fail, but not abandon the idea of shared power. They must choose the slow work of democracy, the arguments, the mess, the imperfect progress, over the empty promise of absolute control. That choice is harder, but it is the only one that protects both freedom and dignity. The fear of discomfort is the growing tendency to avoid anything that causes stress, pain, or emotional challenge. People begin to shape their lives around comfort. They sidestep criticism. They avoid hard conversations. They stick to safe environments. They believe that ease is a goal, not just a preference. Over time, this leads to fragility. Growth becomes rare. Resilience weakens. People stop developing the strength they need to face the real world. This avoidance can take many forms. A student avoids a tough class because they fear failure. A manager doesn't give honest feedback to avoid upsetting an employee. A person leaves a relationship when things get hard instead of working through it. None of these choices are always wrong, but when they become patterns, they limit growth. Discomfort, though unpleasant, is part of learning, connection, and personal change. Imagine someone named Sarah. She gets anxious during conflict, so she avoids it. When a friend hurts her feelings, she stays quiet. When a coworker takes credit for her work, she smiles and says nothing. When she receives feedback that stings, she blocks it out. Over time, Sarah becomes someone who floats through life without friction. She feels safe, but also small. She avoids pain, but also misses the strength that comes from facing it. Discomfort is not the enemy of well-being. It is part of what shapes us. Muscles grow through strain. Minds grow through challenge. Relationships grow through honesty. Avoiding all difficulty may keep things smooth in the short term, but it weakens the very skills people need to thrive. People who never practice discomfort lose their ability to face it. This fear shows up early in life. In schools, students are sometimes shielded from failure. Everyone gets a trophy. Teachers avoid giving low grades to protect self-esteem. Conflict between classmates is managed by adults, instead of encouraging students to talk it out. These efforts come from care, but they often result in young people who don't know how to handle frustration or disappointment. Later, these same young people may struggle at work. They expect praise without correction. They expect safe spaces where nothing hurts. They leave jobs when pressure rises or when managers challenge them. They confuse discomfort with danger. But the workplace, like life, includes stress. It includes people who disagree. It includes failure. Without practice, people don't know how to manage these things. Online spaces make this problem worse. Algorithms feed people what they already agree with. Social media rewards smooth content and short bursts of pleasure. Hard questions are avoided. Complex feelings are filtered out. People curate their feeds to stay in a comfort zone. They mute, block, or scroll past anything that challenges their view of the world. Slowly, their mental world shrinks. They become less curious. They become quicker to judge, slower to listen. Fear of discomfort also affects emotional health. Some people think that negative feelings must be avoided at all costs. They run from sadness, anger, boredom, or guilt. They distract themselves with screens, food, shopping, or work. They never learn how to sit with pain. They never learn how to move through it. As a result, they remain stuck. Their wounds don't heal. Their habits don't change. Their self-understanding remains shallow. Imagine someone named Jamal. He hates feeling anxious. Whenever it rises, he turns on his phone. He scrolls for hours. He avoids the task that triggered the anxiety. Later, he feels worse, behind on work, ashamed of procrastinating, confused by his own feelings. He didn't avoid discomfort, he delayed it. And because he never faced it, it now controls him more than before. Discomfort is also where truth often lives. Honest conversations with friends or family bring tension. Facing one's flaws or regrets hurts. Starting something new feels awkward. But without these moments, people don't change. They stay in loops. They blame others. They settle for less. Growth always asks something hard. Admit fault. Ask for help. Take a risk. Let go of something safe. In a healthy society, people learn to tolerate discomfort without collapsing. They learn how to disagree without shutting down. They learn how to take feedback without feeling attacked. They learn how to fail without quitting. These skills are not natural. They are developed through repetition, exposure, and effort. Shielding people from all challenge takes away the very experiences that build these abilities. Even well-meaning support can turn into enabling. A parent who steps in too quickly teaches the child they can't handle frustration. A friend who always soothes but never challenges teaches that discomfort is something to run from. Support doesn't mean removing all pain. It means walking beside someone as they face it. There is also a social cost to this fear. When people avoid discomfort, they stop standing up for what matters. They don't challenge injustice. They don't speak out when something is wrong. They don't take hard positions. They play it safe. They stay quiet. A society full of people avoiding discomfort becomes passive. It becomes fragile. It breaks under real stress. Think of someone like Rehan. He sees workplace discrimination but says nothing. He's afraid of confrontation. He avoids discomfort. He tells himself it's not his business, but his silence supports the status quo. The problem continues. Avoiding discomfort can become a way of avoiding responsibility. Growth demands friction. Resilience demands practice. Wisdom demands facing things that are hard to hear or feel. The goal is not to chase pain. It's to stop fearing it. It's to build enough inner strength to stay present when things get rough. That strength allows people to listen more, love better, work harder, and live fuller lives. Life doesn't promise ease. It includes illness, loss, failure, betrayal, and uncertainty. Those things cannot be avoided, but people can prepare for them, not by hiding, but by learning. Every moment of discomfort offers a lesson. Every moment of courage builds resilience. Every step through challenge makes the next one easier. Without discomfort, there is no edge, no progress, no learning. The people who grow are not the ones who avoid challenge. They are the ones who feel fear and keep going. They are the ones who get knocked down and rise. They are the ones who are willing to feel awkward, hurt, unsure, and still move forward. That is where strength begins. Zero-sum thinking is the belief that life is a fixed pie. If someone else takes a bigger slice, there's less left for you. In this view, every gain by another person is a loss to you. This idea shapes how people see success, resources, attention, and opportunity. It turns life into a game of winners and losers. It fuels resentment, it breeds suspicion, and it limits the possibility of cooperation or shared progress. This mindset often starts early. Children learn to compare. One gets praised, the other feels ignored. One wins a game, the other feels small. These moments plant a message. If they have more, I must have less. Over time, this message takes root. People start measuring their worth by how they rank. They look sideways instead of forward. They see peers not as allies, but as threats. Imagine two students, Aisha and Mariam, who study in the same class. When Aisha wins an award, Mariam doesn't feel proud. She feels angry. She thinks, why her? Not me? She forgets that success is not always a competition. She forgets that Aisha's win doesn't block her own path. But the zero-sum mindset tells her otherwise, so she distances herself. She stops cheering for others. She views every achievement as a loss for herself. This thinking becomes more intense in settings with real scarcity: jobs, promotions, housing, or social status. People begin to think there's only so much to go around. If someone else gets it, you don't. This can lead to fierce competition, even when cooperation would serve everyone better. It also creates fear. People guard their knowledge, ideas, or support. They hoard opportunity. They push others down to stay ahead. Zero-sum thinking also shows up in politics. Some citizens believe that if one group gains rights, another group must lose power. If immigrants succeed, it must harm locals. If women advance, men must fall behind. If minority voices rise, the majority must shrink. But these are not fixed relationships. Rights are not slices of cake. Dignity is not limited stock. When people forget this, they resist justice, not because they are cruel, but because they think they're protecting themselves. This mindset drives division. It builds walls between groups. It makes people view change as threat, not growth. It turns diversity into a contest. It blocks solidarity. Instead of asking, how can we all win? People ask, how do I make sure I don't lose? This creates a culture of distrust. Every policy, every success story, every shift in power becomes a reason to worry. People stop listening. They start defending. They assume the worst. Social media deepens this effect. People scroll through the successes of others: trips, promotions, awards, relationships. Instead of feeling inspired, they feel behind. Someone else's joy becomes a mirror of their lack. This creates quiet resentment. They wonder why others have what they don't. They feel that life is unfair, not because they suffer directly, but because others seem to have more. This mindset poisons self-worth. In workplaces, zero-sum thinking can ruin teams. A colleague's success is seen as competition. Information is kept secret. Collaboration fades. People focus more on winning credit than solving problems. Leaders who reward only individual performance deepen this effect. They turn team members into rivals. Over time, morale drops. Trust vanishes, productivity suffers, not because talent is missing, but because mindset blocks it. In families, this belief can create long-term harm. Siblings compete for attention or praise. If one is complimented, the other feels invisible. If one excels, the other feels overshadowed. Parents may not mean to cause this, but small signals add up. Over time, the children stop supporting each other. They carry this pattern into adulthood, believing that love, support, and success are limited. Zero-sum thinking also affects how people treat strangers. When resources are tight, during a recession or crisis, people grow suspicious of outsiders. They say, they're taking our jobs, or they're using up our aid. But this framing hides the real causes of scarcity. It points fingers sideways instead of upward. It tells people to fight each other, not to question systems. It keeps power unchallenged. Even in relationships, this mindset creates distance. One partner gets busy or successful. The other feels left behind. Instead of talking, they compare. They think, you're doing well, so I must be doing worse. But relationships aren't scoreboards. Love isn't a limited resource. Growth in one area can feed growth in another. But zero-sum thinking makes people fear imbalance. It makes them compete inside bonds that should be built on trust. This belief is often reinforced by culture. Media shows heroes who win because others lose. Sports frame every match as war. Reality shows reward betrayal. Business books talk about crushing the competition. These messages shape how people see life. They teach that winning means beating others, not building with them. The truth is that many parts of life are not zero-sum. Knowledge grows when shared. Trust deepens when given. Joy increases when spread. The success of one does not block another. In fact, it can clear a path. It can lift others. But this view requires a shift. It asks people to question what they've been taught. It asks them to notice when fear turns into resentment. Zero-sum thinking is not just a mindset. It becomes a habit. It shapes how people react. When someone else does well, do you cheer or flinch? When you hear about policy changes, do you ask who wins or who loses? When a friend shares good news, do you feel inspired or envious? These moments reveal the grip of this belief. Breaking this pattern takes effort. It means celebrating others even when you're struggling. It means trusting that value is not limited. It means seeing your path as your own, not as part of a race against everyone else. This shift doesn't mean ignoring real inequality. It means refusing to let fear define your response to it. Zero-sum thinking narrows the mind. It turns life into constant defense. It makes people guard what they have, even when they're not sure why. It creates a world full of borders, mental, emotional, and social. But life is larger than that. Growth is not a theft. Success is not subtraction. When one person rises, others can too. That's not fantasy. That's reality, if people are willing to believe in it. Woke dogmatism is when the values of social justice are no longer treated as ideas to explore, but as rules to enforce. It begins with good intentions: fairness, inclusion, equity. These goals matter. They respond to real pain and long-standing injustice. But over time, some people turn these ideas into rigid beliefs. They no longer leave space for questions, disagreement, or context. They treat their view as the only moral path. Anyone who steps outside it, even slightly, is seen as dangerous. This creates a climate of fear, not growth. People become afraid to speak. They self-censor. They avoid honest questions, not because they don't care about justice, but because they don't want to be labeled harmful. The space for learning gets smaller. The line between good and bad narrows. Even small mistakes can lead to social punishment. This rigidness pushes away potential allies. It turns complex problems into loyalty tests. Imagine someone named Iman. She believes in equality. She supports movements for racial justice and LGBTQ+ rights. She reads widely and listens with care. One day, She asks a question about the limits of gender categories, not to mock, but to understand. Instead of a discussion, she is told her question is offensive. She is called ignorant. She is excluded from the group. Iman is confused. She thought learning was allowed. But in this space, asking became proof of betrayal. Woke dogmatism punishes the process of thinking out loud. It assumes that people should already know the right words, the right positions, the right tone. If they don't, they must be part of the problem. It sees uncertainty as weakness. But most people grow through confusion. They need space to ask, test, listen, and revise. Without that space, they stop growing. They either leave the conversation or fake agreement. This mindset also creates purity contests. People try to outdo one another in moral awareness. They scan for mistakes in others while hiding their own flaws. They seek approval through performance. They speak in slogans. They correct others not to help, but to prove superiority. In the end, the focus shifts from justice to status. Activism becomes branding. People stop doing the work and start playing a role. Online platforms make this worse. A single tweet, post, or comment can become a test of character. If it doesn't use the right terms or take the expected stance, it's attacked. Context is ignored. Intent is ignored. The goal is not to understand, but to call out. Public shame becomes common. Nuance disappears. People become symbols, either pure or corrupt, with no space in between. This harms the very movements it aims to support. Social justice needs many voices, not just perfect ones. It needs people from different backgrounds, with different questions, experiences, and doubts. But woke dogmatism creates strict boundaries. It says only those who speak like us can join. That excludes the very people who might benefit most from change, or who could bring fresh insight. Think of a worker named Bilal. He supports workers' rights, but doesn't know all the current language around identity politics. He joins a union meeting and shares his thoughts. He's told he used the wrong term when talking about a group. He apologizes, but the group keeps pressing. He's told to read more, speak less, and come back when he's ready. He leaves and never returns. The movement loses a voice, not because he opposed the cause, but because he didn't meet the tone. Dogmatism also makes solidarity fragile. When everyone must agree completely, any difference becomes a threat. Movements split over details. Coalitions collapse. The fight for shared goals gets lost in arguments over vocabulary or posture. People stop building together and start breaking apart over the smallest deviation. The energy turns inward. The cause loses power. Justice requires principles, but it also requires patience. It requires belief, but also flexibility. People don't learn in perfect lines. They make errors. They hold conflicting thoughts. They change over time. A culture that can't handle that becomes rigid, and rigid systems don't bend, they break. There's also a danger of using social justice as a shield from criticism. Some people use moral language to protect their own power. They claim harm where there is simply disagreement. They frame every challenge as an attack. They silence dissent by calling it violence. In doing so, they turn serious tools into props. They weaken the real meaning of harm, safety, and justice. This makes it harder to talk about real abuse. If every disagreement is framed as harm, then the word loses force. People stop listening when real harm is reported. They tune out. They say everything offends someone these days. That reaction grows not from cruelty, but from fatigue. It's the result of too many false alarms. Woke dogmatism also fails to account for cultural difference. Not everyone speaks the same language of justice. Not every culture sees identity in the same way. Imposing one model of awareness can feel like erasure. People feel judged. Not included. They feel pressure to conform, not space to belong. A global movement must allow for variation. Justice is not one size fits all. True justice work is humble. It listens more than it speaks. It invites people in. It helps them grow. It makes room for honest mistakes and honest repair. It knows that language changes, but care is constant. It doesn't ask for purity. It asks for effort. It doesn't treat people as symbols, but as full beings, flawed, learning, trying. Dogmatism forgets this. It treats people like policies. It measures them by checklists. It reduces their story to a position. It says, if you don't agree with us completely, you are against us. That's not justice. That's fear in disguise. That's control posing as morality. Movements that matter last only when they include real people, with real doubt, real conflict, real change. That means staying open. It means knowing the difference between harm and disagreement. It means caring more about growth than performance. The path to justice is not paved with purity. It's built through struggle, listening, and a willingness to stay in the room when things get hard. Woke dogmatism tells people to leave the room or be pushed out. But the work of justice needs rooms full of difference. It needs conversation, not cancellation. It needs grace as much as clarity. It needs the courage to admit when we're wrong, and the wisdom to know that we all are. Sometimes. The meritocracy myth is the belief that people succeed purely through talent, effort, and hard work. It says those who do well deserve it, and those who struggle must have failed in some way. This idea is attractive because it feels fair. It suggests that the world rewards people based on merit. But in reality, this belief ignores the deeper forces that shape opportunity, like class, race, geography, family background, and luck. It turns inequality into a personal flaw and success into a moral badge. The idea of meritocracy is popular in schools, workplaces, and politics. Leaders often say, anyone can succeed if they work hard. Parents tell children, you can be anything you want. Employers say, we hire only the best. These messages feel empowering, but they carry a hidden message. If you don't succeed, it must be your fault. Imagine two students. One lives in a quiet neighborhood with stable housing, good nutrition, and parents who can help with homework. The other lives in a noisy apartment, shares a room with siblings, works part-time to help at home, and has limited access to books or internet. Both may be equally intelligent and hardworking, but their chances are not equal. One starts further ahead. If they both take the same test, their scores might differ, not because one is lazier, but because one has more support. The test measures more than just ability. It also reflects the weight of invisible burdens. Meritocracy ignores these structural issues. It assumes a level playing field. But in reality, systems often favor those who already have advantages. Private schools offer better resources. Wealthy families pay for tutoring. Some children inherit networks that open doors long before their first job. Others must fight just to be noticed. These gaps don't close with effort alone. They require changes in access, support, and opportunity. This belief also hides how much luck plays a role in life. Being born in a stable country, in a healthy body, during a peaceful time, all these things shape what's possible. A student might get a scholarship not just because of grades, but because they were spotted by the right teacher. A worker might get a promotion because their manager likes them. A business might take off because the market happened to shift. These moments often go unnoticed in success stories. People prefer to say they earned everything. But no one succeeds alone. The myth of meritocracy also makes failure feel like shame. If success is based on merit, then failure must mean you lacked something. People start to believe they are lazy, stupid, or weak. They internalize blame. They stop asking questions about the systems around them. They don't see the role of poor schools, low wages, discrimination, or random chance. Instead, they carry silent guilt. Think of someone named Kamal. He works 2 jobs, supports his family, and dreams of going to university. But his grades suffer because he's exhausted. He doesn't get in. He hears politicians say, "Work hard and you'll succeed," and feels like a failure. But Kamal isn't lazy. He's overworked. His failure to access higher education reflects a system that punishes the poor, not a lack of merit. This mindset also shapes how people see others. A wealthy person might look at someone struggling and think, they must not have tried hard enough. They ignore the help they received, whether it was money, advice, or time. They see their success as proof of superiority. This fuels inequality. It justifies keeping power in the hands of the few. It allows the privileged to feel morally justified in hoarding opportunity. In the workplace, meritocracy is used to explain who gets hired, who gets promoted, who gets paid more. But biases often shape these decisions. Studies show that people with certain names, skin colors, genders, or accents are treated differently, even with the same qualifications. People who seem like us are seen as talented. Those who seem different are judged more harshly. Merit becomes a mask for preference. Even in universities, admissions often favor those who play certain sports, attend elite schools, or have family connections. These factors are not about merit. They are about class, yet institutions still call themselves meritocratic. This sends a false message to those excluded. You didn't make it because you weren't good enough. In truth, many were never given a fair shot. This belief also stifles solidarity. When people think they earned everything, they see no reason to help others. They oppose policies like wealth tax, debt relief, or affirmative action. They say, if I did it, so should they. But if their success was shaped by unearned help, then fairness demands that others get help too. Shared progress requires shared responsibility. The myth of meritocracy is also tiring for those who do succeed. It makes them feel they must always earn their worth. If they slow down, they risk being seen as undeserving. They fear falling behind. They see life as a constant race. Every achievement must be justified. Every weakness must be hidden. This creates anxiety, not peace. It turns life into performance. Some people cling to the meritocracy myth because it offers order. It says the world is fair. It says effort will be rewarded. This feels comforting, but comfort built on denial is fragile. When people face real setbacks, the story breaks. They feel betrayed. They either blame themselves more or grow bitter at the world. To move beyond this myth, people need a more honest story, one that respects hard work but also names unfairness, one that honors effort but also questions systems, one that celebrates success but also opens doors for others. This shift doesn't mean giving up ambition. It means widening the path. It means asking who gets to try, who gets second chances, who gets seen. Merit matters, but only in a system that gives everyone a real chance. Until then, saying people get what they deserve hides more than it reveals. It turns privilege into virtue and struggle into failure. It blocks empathy. It distorts reality, and it holds back the very fairness it claims to support. Performative activism is when people act like they care about a cause more than they actually do. The focus is not on fixing a problem, but on being seen as someone who cares. This can mean posting on social media, wearing a slogan, or repeating the right phrases without making any real effort to help. The performance replaces action. It becomes a form of branding. It says, "I'm one of the good people," but often stops there. This kind of activism shows up most clearly during major events. A tragedy happens, a protest spreads, a movement gains momentum. Suddenly, people who were silent before start posting quotes or changing their profile pictures. They write thoughtful captions. They use hashtags. When the moment passes, so does their concern. They don't donate. They don't volunteer. They don't follow up. Their display was temporary. Their involvement was shallow. Imagine someone named Zara. When a video of police violence goes viral, she posts a black square on her Instagram. she adds a caption about justice. She gets dozens of likes. People comment, "So true." But Zara doesn't read up on the issue. She doesn't join any events. She doesn't challenge her own beliefs or behavior. Her post looks right, but it does nothing. She feels like she helped, but she didn't risk or change anything. Performative activism often grows in spaces where image matters more than substance. Brands release vague statements during crises, saying they stand in solidarity, but continue harmful practices. Celebrities tweet about justice while profiting from injustice. Institutions promise to listen and learn without making structural changes. These gestures are designed to protect reputation, not to fix problems. They aim to avoid backlash, not to build progress. This behavior also appears in everyday life. A student might speak up about racism in a class discussion, but stay silent when a peer makes a racist joke. A coworker might wear a pride pin during June, but ignore discrimination at the office. A company might host a one-time diversity training, but keep its leadership team all the same. The message becomes, appearances matter more than outcomes. Performative activism weakens real movements. It creates noise without depth. It crowds out genuine voices. It floods conversations with surface-level content. People start to confuse visibility with change. They think sharing a post is enough. They think being seen at a protest replaces doing the work of organizing. Over time, this drains energy. It builds a culture where people care more about not being called out than about calling for change. This also discourages those doing the hard work. Activists who spend years building coalitions, writing policies, helping communities, and facing resistance see others get praise for a single post. It feels unfair. It feels hollow. It can lead to burnout. It can breed mistrust. When everyone says the right thing, it gets harder to tell who actually means it. Performative activism makes sincerity harder to recognize. It also creates pressure to perform. People feel like they must post something when a crisis happens, even if they don't understand it. Silence is judged. But empty words are safer than silence, so people speak without care. They copy what others say. They use the right tone. They avoid saying anything too specific. They fear being wrong more than they fear being uninformed. The result is a flood of cautious statements that lack courage or clarity. Imagine someone named Bilal. He cares about human rights, but doesn't know much about a conflict overseas. Still, when the topic trends, he feels pressure to post. He shares a quote he barely understands. Later, someone points out that the source is questionable. Bilal deletes the post, feeling embarrassed. He stops engaging altogether. His desire to appear correct kept him from learning first. His fear of being judged kept him from asking questions. Performative activism is often driven by guilt. People feel bad about injustice, so they try to show they're not part of the problem. But guilt alone does not create change. It can lead to impulsive actions meant to clear one's name. It can cause people to center their own feelings, saying, "I feel so heartbroken," rather than asking, "What can I do?" It turns activism into therapy. It shifts focus away from those affected and onto those observing. Real activism is not clean or easy. It's slow, local, repetitive, and often invisible. It involves listening, making mistakes, being corrected, showing up again. It's less about public statements and more about private choices. It asks people to challenge their comfort, not to showcase their care. It doesn't always come with applause. In fact, it often brings conflict. It means standing up when no one is watching. It means doing the work even when you feel unsure. The danger of performative activism is that it can feel like enough. It satisfies the need to be seen as moral without asking for change. It builds a self-image without changing behavior. Over time, this can replace activism altogether. People believe they've done their part because they've been visible. They stop pushing for more. Think of a city where protests break out after a shooting. Local businesses hang signs that say, we support justice. But inside, they don't pay fair wages. They don't hire from the affected community. Their practices remain unchanged. The signs are decoration. The message is hollow. Without action, their support becomes a shield against criticism, not a step toward equity. Performative activism thrives in a culture that values appearance more than depth. It feeds on the need to be liked, followed, and affirmed. It treats movements like trends, but justice is not a trend. It's a long, difficult process. It demands humility, listening, and ongoing effort. People who care must resist the urge to perform. They must begin by learning quietly, acting locally, and being honest about what they do and don't know. They must speak less when unsure and act more where they live. They must recognize that real support often goes unseen, that progress takes time, that being right is less important than being useful. Sincerity matters more than style. Depth matters more than display. Real change begins not with posts, but with practice. Hyperproductivity worship is the belief that a person's value comes from how much they produce. It treats constant work as a virtue. It treats rest as laziness. It views stillness with suspicion. In this mindset, every hour must be filled, every task must have a goal, and every outcome must be measurable. People learn to see their lives as a checklist. They measure worth in output. This belief takes root in schools, homes, and offices. Children are praised for being busy. They join clubs, take extra classes, learn new skills, all at once. Parents beam at packed schedules. Teachers reward students who work fast. Rest becomes a luxury, not a need. As they grow up, these children carry the habit with them. They feel anxious when they stop. They feel guilty when they rest. At work, the same pattern continues. Productivity is praised above all. People compete to come early, stay late, and reply to emails fastest. They eat lunch at their desks. They skip breaks. They turn hobbies into side hustles. They work on weekends. They answer messages at night. The goal is to never be idle. In this culture, being busy means being good. Imagine someone named Hira. She wakes up early and immediately checks her phone. She responds to emails, plans her meetings, and starts her day without pause. Even during breakfast, she listens to a productivity podcast. She feels proud of her pace, but by the evening, she is tired and irritable. She wants to rest but feels she hasn't done enough. She opens her laptop again. She doesn't know how to stop. Her body is present, but her mind never slows down. Hyperproductivity worship turns time into a resource to exploit. Minutes are tools. Hours are currency. There's always a better way to spend them. If someone spends time with family, it must be meaningful. If they rest, it must be rest that recharges. If they relax, it must be earned. Even leisure becomes work. The pressure to optimize never fades. This mindset spreads through language. People say grind and hustle as if they're noble. They call rest unproductive. They treat overwork like a badge. They admire those who do it all. But this praise hides harm. Many people who seem successful are burnt out. They suffer from stress, anxiety, insomnia, or isolation. But no one sees that part. They only see the highlight reel. Hyperproductivity also flattens people. It reduces them to their output. A writer is only as good as their last article. A parent is judged by their child's achievements. A worker is measured by how many tasks they complete. People begin to speak in metrics. They forget how to describe joy, presence, or meaning without numbers. They stop asking, "How do I feel?" and only ask, "What did I get done?" This belief system hurts creativity. Real ideas need space. They grow in quiet moments, not in back-to-back meetings. They form in daydreams, not deadlines. But when every second is packed, there's no space to think. People recycle old ideas. They chase easy wins. They avoid deep work because it takes time. Over time, their work loses depth. Imagine someone named Usman. He's a designer. His manager wants constant updates. Usman rushes through ideas to meet targets. He stops experimenting. He stops exploring. He just produces. His work becomes safe, predictable, and dull. He meets the numbers but loses the meaning. His talent fades not from lack of skill, but from lack of space. Hyperproductivity also breaks relationships. When people treat time as a resource, they stop being fully present. They check their phones during conversations. They cancel plans for deadlines. They treat others as interruptions. They forget how to just be with someone without trying to achieve something. Over time, their connections weaken. This culture also ignores the body. It pushes people past their limits. They work through illness. They skip sleep. They rely on caffeine and adrenaline. They ignore warning signs. They tell themselves they can rest later. But the body keeps score. It breaks down. It sends signals: headaches, fatigue, anxiety. But these are seen as obstacles, not messages. Hyperproductivity worship is not just personal, it's systemic. Workplaces reward constant output. Policies favor overtime over balance. Success stories highlight effort, not rest. Leaders model overwork and expect others to follow. People who set boundaries are seen as less committed. The system pushes everyone to keep moving, even when they're exhausted. This belief also creates inequality. Not everyone can keep up. Some people have health issues, caregiving duties, or other limits. But in a culture that worships speed, they are seen as weak. Their contributions are overlooked. Their pace is judged. Hyperproductivity rewards those who can afford to give everything and punishes those who cannot. There's also a moral edge to this mindset. Rest becomes a character flaw. People feel ashamed for needing a break. They judge themselves harshly. They say, "I wasted time," even when they needed it. They forget that rest is not failure. It's a basic need. It's part of being alive. Think of someone like Madiha. She used to love drawing, but now she only draws to post online. She checks likes. She tracks engagement. She calls it a hobby, but it feels like work. When she draws for herself, she feels guilty. She thinks, "I should be doing something useful." What once gave her peace now adds pressure. Her joy is lost to output. Hyperproductivity worship hides behind noble goals. It says, "You're building something. You're chasing your dream. You're making the most of life." But it confuses motion with meaning. It tells people to keep going, even when they've lost their way. There is value in effort. There is dignity in work. But when productivity becomes the only measure, people forget how to be. They forget how to rest, reflect, or simply exist. They burn out, they break down, and still they wonder, why am I not enough? The answer lies not in doing more, but in asking why. Why the rush? Why the pressure? Why the fear of stillness? In those questions, people may find what they've been chasing all along. Not success, but peace. Not output, but presence. Not more, but enough. Techno-Solutionism is the idea that all problems can be solved with technology. It sounds helpful at first. Why not use tools to make life better? The issue is that this mindset skips over the deeper causes of problems. It puts technology at the center, even when the real solution needs something else, like policy change, education, or social effort. In short, it assumes that if we invent the right app or device, everything else will fall into place. But the world doesn't work that way. Imagine a city facing high crime rates in poor neighborhoods. A techno-solutionist approach might be to install AI-powered cameras that track behavior and predict crimes before they happen. This feels efficient and modern, but it doesn't address why people commit crimes in the first place. Lack of education, poverty, housing insecurity, and poor mental health services often sit beneath the surface. Cameras can only observe. They can't heal. So while the tech might reduce crime in the short term or invisible spaces, it does nothing to improve lives or fix root causes. The same problem will show up elsewhere or take new forms. Another example comes from education. Many schools, especially in underfunded areas, face challenges like low attendance, limited teaching staff, and poor learning outcomes. A common tech solution is to roll out tablets, learning apps, or AI tutors. These tools may help some students, but they often miss the broader point. If a child is hungry, scared, or lacks a quiet place to study, no app can fix that. If teachers are burned out or underpaid, a tablet won't inspire them. The focus on digital learning often ignores what students really need: human connection, emotional safety, and consistent support. Technology can support education, but it cannot carry the entire burden. The logic of Techno-Solutionism also fails in climate change. Take the idea of spraying particles into the atmosphere to block sunlight and cool the planet, called solar geoengineering. This is a bold use of tech, but it skirts the actual cause of climate change: greenhouse gas emissions from industries, vehicles, and energy systems. If the world keeps polluting and we rely on artificial clouds to cool us, we only delay the consequences. We also create new risks. What happens if the spray stops? What if it affects rainfall or causes droughts in parts of the world? Instead of reducing emissions and changing our energy use, Techno-Solutionism tries to patch over the symptoms. Another real-world case is digital contact tracing during the COVID-19 pandemic. Several countries released apps that tracked people's proximity and exposure. The goal was to reduce infection by alerting users if they'd been near someone who tested positive. The apps made headlines, but they didn't replace public health basics: testing, masks, isolation, and trust building in communities. In places where people didn't trust the government or lacked phones, these apps had little effect. And in some regions, the data collection raised concerns about surveillance. Here, technology played a part, but it was not the main answer. It needed to be part of a broader system, not a substitute for one. Techno-Solutionism can even affect how we think about mental health. Many platforms now offer mood trackers, meditation apps, and therapy bots. These tools can help some people, but they also shift the focus away from social isolation, work stress, and systemic inequalities that harm mental health in the first place. An app might teach breathing exercises, but it can't fix a toxic job or an unsafe home. By framing mental health as a personal problem that an individual must manage with tech, we risk ignoring the social conditions that fuel distress. One reason Techno-Solutionism appeals to people is its speed and clarity. Building an app is faster than reforming an education system. Designing a new gadget feels more exciting than holding long policy meetings. But fast fixes can create slow disasters. They may bring new forms of inequality. For instance, when services go fully digital, such as banking, healthcare, or public benefits, people without internet access or technical skills get left behind. Tech becomes a barrier instead of a bridge. What was meant to solve a problem ends up deepening it. Tech companies also shape the way we see problems. If you're a company that sells software, you'll frame every issue as a software issue. If you make wearable health trackers, you'll push the idea that health is about metrics and data. This narrows the range of possible solutions. It becomes harder to ask the right questions. For example, instead of asking, why are people becoming diabetic at such high rates, the focus turns to, how can we get more people to wear fitness watches? The first question leads toward food systems, advertising, and urban design. The second stays on the surface. Sometimes the tech solution becomes the problem. In agriculture, some regions now use AI-powered irrigation systems to save water. This can work well, but when farmers rely only on data models without knowing how to read the land themselves, they may lose touch with local conditions. If the system fails or the data is wrong, crops suffer. Traditional knowledge, often passed down through generations, gets sidelined. When we treat tech as the only form of intelligence, we devalue other ways of knowing. There's also a moral side to Techno-Solutionism. It often avoids questions of fairness, justice, and context. A drone delivering medical supplies sounds like progress, but what if it flies over poor neighborhoods that still lack hospitals or roads? What if the drone works for private clients and leaves out the rest? In these cases, tech can give the illusion of progress while hiding inequality. It's easy to celebrate the gadget and forget the people it does not reach. In politics, this mindset can be dangerous. If leaders believe that every problem has a technical fix, they may dodge hard conversations. They may avoid responsibility. Instead of dealing with racism, poverty, or corruption, they might fund smart cities or surveillance systems. This looks like action but avoids accountability. The problems remain, dressed up in digital gloss. Techno-Solutionism does not mean we should reject technology. Tools can help. Innovation matters. But tools must serve people, not replace understanding. When we treat tech as the answer to everything, we stop asking better questions. And without better questions, we get poor solutions, no matter how advanced the software.